Mammoth continue their road trip tonight to Carolina. The Jazz are off. They lost last night to Golden State. Not a lot of defense was played because the Jazz don't believe in that. 4 straight L's for the Jazz now. They're going to host Brooklyn coming up on Friday, a team like the Utah Jazz that aren't necessarily serious about competing. Utah women will take on Brigham Young coming up on Saturday down in Provo. So we've got a little rivalry game action for you guys as well. Jesse Minter introduced as the Ravens head coach. And so some interesting thoughts from him today. 2 vacancies left. We also heard from Joe Brady in Buffalo, and Josh Allen spoke to the media today as well. When the pro football season comes back and starts, 10 new coaches will be among the landscape, which is tied for a record. Speaking of 10, we are 10 days away from Super Bowl 60 in Santa Clara. Between Seattle and New England, Seattle's still getting about 4.5 points, depending on which sports book you look at. And apparently both quarterbacks right now are dealing with some injuries. Drake May has a shoulder issue that has kept him kind of on the sidelines a little bit in preparation. Now, both teams, of course, get an extra week of rest, and we know that Sam Darnold is nursing that oblique as well. But Super Bowl 60, Santa Clara. Don't forget, we are your home of the Super Bowl here in this market, so you can listen to it if you're driving around town here on ESPN 700. All right, our first guest right out of the gates. We'll preview the Super Bowl. We'll talk about these new coaches with Sam Bruckhaus from Sumer Sports, fastly becoming one of our favorite analysts to join the show. We'll continue the football conversation, maybe bring it around to the college side with Max Brown, who once upon a time was the starting quarterback for USC until a young man named Sam Darnold showed up on campus and took his job, and Max transferred to Pitt. So we'll see what Max has to say about Sam being the first Southern Cal quarterback to ever start in a Super Bowl, a stat that continues to blow my mind. Cade Madsen, 20-year-old professional bull rider from Honeyville, Utah, will join us coming up at 3:30 today. Excited about this. Get to know this young man who has really rised up the ranks of professional bull riding. And, of course, PBR.com is where you go for the event coming up at the Delta Center. We'll bring in Gavin Peterson, Coach Pete, the head coach of the Utah women's basketball program. Talk about their big win a couple days ago, and then get into some rivalry game chatter as the Utah women's basketball team will take on BYU coming up on Saturday. Sam Bruckhaus, Max Brown, Cade Madsen, Gavin Peterson, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. Hello, how are you? And that guy, pulling double duty. Do you have any juice left for afternoon drive?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're still good to go. Always fun to chat with our guy OC, with Eric Weddle and Gordy Chiesa in studio. Gordy brings enough energy for me to carry over, so I'm good to go.
Gordy is the absolute best. I'm going to start the push. We always talk in this market about Dale Murphy to the Hall of Fame. How about one Gordon Chiesa, who has given his life to the game of basketball, Springfield, Massachusetts, Naismith Hall of Fame?
I mean, I like it. I love it. Gordy has spent so much time, and as he likes to do so, kind of in the background, right? Maybe now he's been a head coach for good programs and good teams, but he's such a quiet guy outside of radio, and I think that's probably why you don't necessarily hear his name much outside of, well, this radio station.
He is the best. He is the best. Longtime assistant coach in both college and professional basketball. Had a couple of head coaching jobs as well. All right, Sam Bruckhaus will be our first guest today, right out of the gates on a Thursday afternoon. But before we catch up with Sam, courtesy of our good friends and your good friends too at Prize Picks, it is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 with Prize Picks.
Big game's almost here, guys. Big game's almost here. There's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. Got some breaking news, and it's good news for you because you can make a little cash here. It's the Big Game Max Discount. So Prize Picks has a special max discount for the big game live on the app right now. Drake May needs to pass for 1 yard. My guess is he'll do that. And then you get the max discount to win. Just add one other player to your lineup, and if your picks hit, you can cash in. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right, we are going to do a lot of football today, both college and pro, with a guest list that includes a couple of really good college football guests. But let's get into a little Jazz, watching the Jazz game last night. Wardell, Stephen Curry, and the Golden State Warriors ran away from the Jazz there. The Jazz got off to a decent start, and then at some point, the run that has become inevitable started to manifest. The Jazz could not guard the three-point line, lazy closeouts. They were not connected to their man defensively. I lost count of how many times the Jazz were just losing people on backdoor cuts. And that's Golden State's offense. It's everyone's offense at this point, with spacing, the ability to handle the ball, force the defense to collapse, kick it out, find three-point shooters, but also constant movement. It's very, very reminiscent to the San Antonio Spurs team under Greg Popovich. And, of course, we know that a lot of people thought Steve Kerr was going to be like a Phil Jackson disciple type. He's very much steeped in the beliefs of Greg Popovich, far more than Phil Jackson. A lot of people thought Steve was going to take the New York job when Phil Jackson was, well, he was cosplaying as a general manager. As the story goes, the Knicks had a bunch of trade opportunities, and they couldn't get a hold of Phil because he was in, like, Montana on peyote or something. So watching Golden State, even with Stephen Curry and Draymond Green being a little bit advanced, and as far as the age goes, and Klay Thompson now in Dallas, the Greg Popovich offensive philosophies are very, very apparent. Now, Will Hardy coaches in a similar manner as it pertains to his belief in how offensive basketball can be played. And look, we all know the deal here. They're playing their way into a portion of the lottery where they're hoping that they can keep their pick and maybe cash in and get a top 3 pick. And ultimately, that's what needs to happen for this growth to expedite. But a lot of conversation over the past 24 hours about whether or not the Jazz should get involved on a serious level as we're 1 week away from the trade deadline. It's not very often, and maybe this is changing now with the landscape of the NBA and how things have changed with player movement. I mean, we're spoiled in this market. If you're a basketball fan of a certain age, for basically 2 decades, you had John Stockton and Karl Malone, who more often than not played all 82 games. Never seriously entertained the option of playing elsewhere outside of Karl at the end when he moonlighted with the Lakers, but he was, of course, far past his prime. It's not like that anymore. It's not, Jordan stays in Chicago, Ewing stays in New York. It's so different, and a lot of it did start with LeBron, of course, who, by the way, was in Cleveland last night. They had a very nice video tribute to him. He was very emotional. A lot of people surmising that might have been his last trip to Cleveland. The Cavs smoked the Lakers, but kind of a cool moment. Oh, actually, Porter, before I forget, I have a question for you. When LeBron James goes into the Hall of Fame, what jersey is he wearing? Right?
I think Cleveland.
Yeah, so do I.
I think it's, and maybe it is as simple as him being in his hometown.
Yeah.
That title to me, I know he's got one everywhere else he's played, but it felt like more than any of the others. I
would agree with that. I was thinking about this last night because they were talking about how the Cavs are going to build a statue. Can you get 3 statues? Miami, Cleveland, and L.A.?
Man. I mean, I guess you could. When you have like full careers with each of those teams, you at least have that possibility.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about that last night as they were discussing his kind of legacy in Cleveland. But anyway, back to the point of the Utah Jazz and what we might see prior to the trade deadline. Let me be clear, we're not going to see anything, would be my guess. But if you look at the potential of acquiring a player like Giannis Antetokounmpo, my point is, once upon a time, a player like Giannis, even at the age of 31, becoming available, felt like a once-in-a-generation deal. But I'm sitting here, discussing a league where a year ago, a general manager who is now on the unemployment line decided to trade a generationally special player at the age of 25. So it's not like this never happens, but when it comes to the Jazz potential to expedite their growth, they're going to have to be bold at some point. And certainly this year, if the Jazz continue to lose, which they probably will, and if they end up in the lottery and they don't have lottery luck again, and we're sitting here talking about another just like benign airport 6'8" wing that they drafted at the 8th spot, at some point you have to utilize the treasure trove of assets you have to go all in and try to do something bold. And I know they talk a lot about playing the long game, but oftentimes, and look, that's a great life belief because, obviously believe in yourself to get better at some point. But at some point, you saying we're playing the long game falls on deaf ears when you are refusing to do anything that's bold. And yes, this is a long game play when it comes to a city like Salt Lake, and you draft and develop and hope at some point you can retain. But we're about, 35 games left in the fourth year of a rebuild that, if we're honest, has been clunky at best and hasn't really shown a ton of growth. It's shown some, and the Keontae George growth this year is not nothing. And I love Ace, man. I really do. I mean, there are some things to like about this. We know the deal with Lowry. But with a player like Giannis available, I just wonder if anybody over there is kind of like, hey, we can actually put together the best package for Milwaukee. Because, the Jazz, along with teams like, look, San Antonio has better young players. Oklahoma City has better young players. And those two teams also have a treasure trove of draft capital. But at what point does having a million future first-round picks, at what point does that benefit you if you're not using them to expedite the growth now? And, they wouldn't want to move on from marketing. If we play this fun hypothetical game where they ultimately are interested in trading for Giannis, it has to be with the belief that adding him now instantly catapults you in the neighborhood of an Oklahoma City or a San Antonio or whoever you believe the good teams are now and will be for a couple of years. And even if instantly, it's not going to change anything for the rest of the season, no matter what. I mean, it would be fun and cool, but you make the calculation that you believe Giannis at 31, next to Marketing and next to Keontae, and, they'll probably have to utilize all of their expiring deals on the veteran side of things to make the numbers work. And then they would have to include, probably 5 picks and swaps to make this thing go down. But you do your calculation to believe that in the next 4 to 5 years, as Lowry kind of ages and Giannis is in the final portion of his career, surrounded by these young players, are you throwing punches with the best teams in the league? You're probably not. So this is an exercise in futility because they're not going to do it. I just wonder at some point, have you analyzed your group and realize if you don't do something bold, we're in the danger zone of becoming the Western Conference version of the Washington Wizards here in Salt Lake. All right, coming up next, we're going to preview Super Bowl 60, and we'll talk some pro football, the new hires, couple of job openings with the Raiders and the Cardinals. So Sam Bruckhouse will bat leadoff on a Thursday afternoon, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Looks like the Raiders are going to interview Clint Kubiak this weekend. He's busy preparing for a Super Bowl, but two coaching vacancies left. It's the Cardinals and the Raiders. Super Bowl 60, 10 days away. Our next guest has rapidly become one of our favorite analysts to talk with every week about pro football. It's our guy, Sam Bruckhouse from Sumer Sports. What's going on, Sam?
Spence, you always have the best intro music, so I got to shout out my guy Porter because I'm just vibing out here right now.
There you go. No, I appreciate that. So I just give him the general vibe, and then I let him go with it. And so I appreciate that, Sam. But let's get into it, man. I mean, we're 10 days away now. The reports are we've got a little shoulder issue with Drake May, and Sam Darnold still dealing with the oblique. Any insight on the injuries to the quarterbacks?
Look, I mean, it's two tough injuries, but it's almost a 20-week season in the NFL. I guarantee you not one of these guys is 100% healthy, if not even 80% healthy. As a former player, you probably have 3 to 4 I can't call them injuries because injuries have to be reported, but you have 3 or 4 things that hurt real bad. I think they'll get the week to rest that up. And, they both look pretty good in the conference championship game, or at least pretty healthy in the conference championship game. So I think they'll be good to go Super Bowl Sunday. Before
we preview the Super Bowl, let's look back on Conference Championship Sunday, and we'll start with the early game that, unfortunately, I mean, look, the deal. We've got a lot of Bronco fans here in our market because proximity, and obviously we don't have a team. Got a few Utes on the Broncos as well, our guy Garrett Bowles. I felt bad for the fan base because you lose your starting quarterback, and then the conditions. I mean, look, I continue to laugh at the fact that Josh McDaniels called a play for Drake May to roll out and throw the ball out of bounds. I mean, I feel like the Patriots were probably deserving winners, but the conditions I felt like just made it impossible. So how did you kind of digest that 10-7 win from New England?
So I think at first you got to give it up for Sean Payton and his ability to script out Jarrett Stidham in an offense that over time it became clear is not built for him. We've talked all year with y'all, Spence, about how that offense was built off of 2 things, and that was Bo Nix scrambling around and making plays with his legs in the design run game as well, and his ability to not get sacked and get the ball in the air. It became abundantly clear by the second quarter, even when the weather was still good, that the Patriots were going to blitz nearly every play in an attempt to ensure not necessarily that they were going to sack Jarrett Stidham, but that Jarrett Stidham was not going to get the ball in the air, targeting his wide receivers and tight ends. They successfully did that, but then, of course, those snows came, and then it came down to one thing. Will Drake May take 2 big sacks, or will Drake May make 2 big scrambles? He made 2 big scrambles. He made just enough plays to get by and to get around that Denver defense, and that was really the difference in the game. It really came down to that. Can Drake May, who has about an 8% sack rate, well below average, kind of overcome that and make a play? They scheme up. It seems like they didn't actually scheme up the bootleg. He makes the big scramble, and that was the end of the game.
What is fair to say, because I know a lot of Bronco fans were just livid with the Jarrett Stidham stuff, and I know he's a very highly regarded backup. At one point, the Patriots, of course, thought he might be the future there, and the reports are the Patriots actually wanted him back as Drake May's backup, but Denver kind of outbid them. But early on, made a couple of awesome throws, the long throw to Mims, then the touchdown pass. But I felt like the conditions just made it entirely impossible for anybody to play quarterback at a very high level. What's fair to say about the performance of Jarrett Stidham?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that he executed the script well. After that, it became kind of a meltdown. But I think if we're looking to blame someone or highlight something, that Titanic offensive line that basically includes 2 All-Pros and Garrett Bowles and Quinn Miners and another player that we really love in Mike McGlinchey in terms of our AI Sumer scores, they really weren't up to snuff. And so it does kind of highlight, once again, what the data has shown us time and time again, that sack avoidance is a quarterback stat, and Bo Nix does not get sacked. He makes his offensive line's job substantially easier, and that allows them to get out in the screen game and in some of the running game stuff and allow them to sleep a little easier and use a little less energy in the pass protection game one-on-one. And as a result, Jarrett Stidham just didn't Bo Nix. He had a much higher sack rate, but you got to give it up for the defensive tackles of the New England Patriots. Milton Williams, the offseason acquisition from the Patriots, had nearly like a 35% pressure rate just by himself. he was getting after the quarterback alongside Christian Barmore, who was dominant and really kind of showed up Quinn Miners, which is a very, very difficult thing to do. And so you get those two guys pressing the pocket against a backup quarterback in terrible conditions, and you kind of just got to tip your hat to the New England Patriots because they played a really good game. They outplayed that offensive line.
Since we brought up his name a couple times, and I know the answer to the question because we've talked about it in the past, but for our Ute fan listeners, Garrett Bowles, and just a really, really cool story, friend of the show. We've had him on a number of different times, and he's the nicest guy. Walter Payton, Man of the Year nominee from Denver. Tell our listeners who are Ute fans what Garrett Bowles' just reputation is in pro football and how much he's really grown in his role.
Look, I don't know if y'all saw the latest news, but he was just nominated as a finalist for the Protector of the Year award. We basically had him as he should win that award according to our Sumer scores. And what do our Sumer scores track? They track the ability to win one-on-one matchups, and that's basically what Garrett Bowles has become in this league. And mind you, it took a while to get here. He was a highly touted prospect. He comes into Denver. They expect him to start immediately, struggles a little bit, but all of a sudden he's become an island over there at left tackle for the Denver Broncos. He has been amongst our all-pro Protector of the Year, perfect 10 rated tackles for the past 2 years. He excels at both pass blocking and run blocking, and he's a guy that you can build an entire offense around. And so when you look at the success of Bo Nix, it really comes down to some of those offensive linemen. Primarily when it comes to pass protection, Bo Nix does a lot by himself, but it really helps when you have a guy like Garrett Bowles over there on your backside really holding it down.
Before we move off of this, again, for our Bronco fans who are tuning in, the future of Denver, bright? What do you think, Sam, as far as, what they'll look like moving forward?
I have to say it's bright. They have most of that defense locked down. We thought Riley Moss in particular, who would be the weak link on that defense altogether, had a really, really good year. If that defense stays together, and it seems like Vance Joseph is going to remain the defense coordinator at this point, it comes down to the other side of the ball. They have one of the best offensive lines in the league, just slightly outplayed by a very good defense and an ascendant defense in the Patriots, and they have Bo Nix. And so the question is, can this team be a Super Bowl team every year? As stated, it comes down to Bo Nix. I think in the draft, they're probably going to add a couple more weapons, or at least try to. They are in an enviable position where, much like they did last year by adding Jahdae Barron, a third cornerback, to that quiver with already two good cornerbacks, that they can just add a guy who is the best player available, whether that's on the offensive line, defensive line, wherever. They can build depth, and I think that's what they're going to do in this draft season.
As a guy who played the game, I'm quite sure, and I want to be clear, this is not my opinion, but you will scold me for asking this question anyway, and I'm prepared for it.
Okay.
I feel like every time there's a playoff game that is really not entirely decided by inclement weather and conditions, but very heavily influenced, it brings back the conversation about whether or not the NFL, come playoff time, should exclusively play these games in warm weather cities or indoor venues. To that, you say what?
I think that it potentially can take away the home field advantage. I think that if you get Jared Stidham in a dome and there's a couple more plays run, the variance does go the Patriots' way. And so I think there's certain climates, particularly in those NFC North and NFC East places, where you got to go up to Buffalo and you got to beat Josh Allen in Buffalo in the snow if they're a good team during the regular season. But I do think that there are some matchups that should be in the dome. I mean, that game just became a slop fest by the end, but you don't get the outcome of the Drake May kind of heads-up play at the end without that type of weather. So, I'm kind of leaning indifferent. If you asked the newsletter writer, Sumer Sports aficionado, film aficionado, Sean Syed, he'd tell you everything needs to be in a dome. I used to be solidly, let's get these snow games. Championships are won in the rain, in the snow, and that the team got to come together and figure out a way to win. I'm kind of in the middle now, so I'm not going to scold you too hard, Spence. I think I understand your side. I do like watching some of the snow games. I think your team does have to bond, and at the end of the day, in order to win, 16, 17 games, you have to have a well-rounded team, but I'm kind of in the middle on this one. I think it kind of comes down to whatever the teams think and how they want to build their stadium.
Oh, okay. I do think the other thing that makes this somewhat problematic, there are some cities, Green Bay, Buffalo, where like your NFL team is your life, and it is the lifeblood of the community. It's the lifeblood of the city. So to ask the fans to, do away with the opportunity to actually go watch their team potentially qualify for a Super Bowl.
100%.
Yeah, like ripping that from a community feels like it makes it a no-fly zone, you know?
Yeah, absolutely not. And I mean, you've seen the Buffalo games. You saw the Denver game. And in particular, you watched the Chicago game. It was like Caleb Williams got superpowers the worse the weather got. And all of a sudden, the crowd is loud. You're on Lake Michigan. I think that was the true highlight of this playoff season, was Soldier Field becoming a home field advantage after years of kind of being like a morgue and them trying to get out of it. All of a sudden, it became one of the biggest home field advantages in the playoffs.
All right, moving over to the nightcap, well, I guess afternoon cap, which obviously was just far more entertaining because the conditions were much better. And we had two good football teams, and it was such a fun watch. But Seattle ultimately gets it done, 31-27. Sam, what are your main takeaways?
I mean, we've covered this at Sumer Sports all year. I think we've probably done more hours on the Seahawks and Rams matchups because it had so much of what and how football is changing, whether it's scheme diversity, run game stuff, play action, matching defenses. You can go check out the Sumer Sports Show feed on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and just search Rams or Seahawks, and you can see over 6 or 7 hours of us talking about all this. Another excellent all-timer game in the conference championship. Here's the reality of the situation, Spence. Maybe I'm a little biased. I am an old special teamer, but when it comes down to it, the Rams' putrid special teams killed them in pretty much every loss they had this year, other than maybe the Panthers loss where it was pouring down raining. And yet again, we get a muff punt that leads to a score. It's just the story of the Rams this season. You can go and point at the defense not playing well. You can say that they weren't able to convert on fourth down, this, that, and the third. It's the special teams. The Seahawks were getting the ball at the 35 pretty much every single time. And when you add in a muff punt, much like you add in the second game, a Rashid Shaheed big touchdown return, the special teams just sucked, frankly, for the Rams, and it bit them in the butt again. And frankly, this was predictable. When the Rams and the Seahawks both won, I texted some of my friends, and I immediately said, we're doomed to watch the Rams play awesome and Matthew Stafford play a Hall of Fame level game and for it to get ruined by special teams. So, frankly, I wish I would say this wasn't expected. Like you said, these are two excellent teams. The reality is that one unit was just substantially worse than the other, and that was the Rams special teams.
You called it. And when was it the Smith kid who muffed that punt? I can't remember who it was who fumbled the punt. Okay. And by the way, it looked like he had never done that before. It wasn't just like he muffed the punt. He fell down. Yeah, Xavier Smith, when he fumbled that punt, I thought of you immediately because you came on the show prior to the game and you actually called that's something like that was going to go down, yeah?
Yeah, it did. It's happened all year. And what's funny is at the beginning of the year, the Rams special teams unit, or particularly in the kickoff game, was one of the better ones. Josh McCarty, who ultimately did not end up being the kicker at all at the end of the year, was kind of a pioneer of the dirty ball kick. They were pinning teams down in the 20 and the 15, and it looked like everything was going to be good. I don't know what happened. The wheels came off, absolutely. Another caveat here is that they kind of changed the way that they were playing defense. In the first game, they were and they did this against the 49ers during the season as well. They were matching heavy personnel 21-22. The Rams were with dime and a little bit of nickel, a lot of base, and it allowed Sam Darnold to really shred him. So if you do want something that's not just special teams, because I freak out about special teams all the time, you can kind of look at the defensive approach as maybe a poor decision. They did that in the second game, and they got shredded. I think they give up something like 67 or 68 points in games that they're playing, 30 or 40% base across the game and matching those heavy sets with A.J. Barner and some of those other guys with base personnel. I thought it was an interesting strategy. We did see as well the offense change a little bit with adding in 12 personnel and substantially more 11 than 13, which they had been doing. That's meaning tight ends is that last number. That worked to a charm. They were ripping people apart, the Rams were. So the two things that I really highlight as the reason that they lost this game, number one, and by far, is special teams. And number two is their defensive approach switching, allowing the passing game to kind of start getting off, allowing Jackson Smith and Jigba to find some zone soft spaces, and it ends up in Sam Darnold in the Super Bowl.
Who is a better football player, not just wide receiver, Puka Nacua or Jackson Smith and Jigba?
Wow, this can be debated all the time, and I think if you're really lining up, so the way I like thinking about this, Spence, is number one, you got to look at contracts. They're both going to probably be the highest paid wide receiver, or you're going to get contracts off of one another, a staring match of some kind, at least. But I would suspect that they're both going to top at least Jamar Chase, if not potentially Micah Parsons, as the highest paid player in the league. I think you got to go with Puka Nacua, though. Both of the guys are excellent at the catch point. Both the guys are excellent at route running. Both the guys are excellent at create separation. Both the guys are good at yards after the catch. But Puka Nacua blocks his butt off, and he is used on the interior, and he can also run the ball as well. We haven't necessarily seen that from Jackson Smith and Jigba. He is a little bit of a smaller guy, maybe doesn't quite have the frame that Puka Nacua has. So if I'm rebuilding a team right now, other than maybe Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett, and frankly, it might only be Myles Garrett, I think your two top-tier guys, if you were rebuilding a team and you already got a quarterback, is either Myles Garrett or Puka Nacua.
The future of the Rams now, before we get to, obviously the teams that are still playing. Matt Stafford has 1 year left on his deal. I think he's 38 at this point. And, I mean, he was so good this year. Just if he wants to come back, I would imagine Sean McVay would welcome that with open arms. I know they've got some decisions to make, but what does the future look like for the Los Angeles Rams?
Yeah, I think you try to keep that offense as is. Rumors going around the Shrine and Senior Bowl is that they have a close eye on Mekhi Lemon, the USC wide receiver, which is just adding another element of firepower. If you can get Mekhi Lemon, who blocks much like Puka and all those other guys do, contested catch, superstar quality kind of around the board, you got Devontae and you got Puka Nacua. That's an offense that, frankly, should just be number one yet again in EPA per play. The problem is their defense. Most of the year, they were very good. They were able to get pressure with their 5 excellent defensive linemen. That's Jared Verse, Kobe Turner, Byron Young, Braden Fisk, Poona Ford. It kind of fell off of a cliff at the end. They weren't really able to get pressure on Sam Darnold. That allowed them to play a lot of safeties in the back end. I still like Quentin Lake as a slot corner, slot safety, nickelback type guy. The wheels came off with the defensive corners, though. You think about Emmanuel Forbes, who barely played in the conference championship. Kobe Durant, a young guy who I think still has some development. They're going to have to figure out what they're going to do with those safety positions. I think they feel comfortable about Lake, Cameron Kitchens, and Cam Curl. I think you got to address the cornerback position. That is the thing that held them back at the end of the season for the most part.
What stands out most to you about this really incredible story with the redemption arc of Sam Darnold, who, as again, a New York Jets fan, quite frankly, is the only quarterback we've had and drafted that I actually thought, okay, maybe this is the guy. Now, it didn't work in New York because nothing works in New York because the Jets are morons, but you saw some things in Minnesota, and then ultimately he becomes the first quarterback from USC to ever start in a Super Bowl, which still blows me away. But what has stood out most to you about this great redemption story?
I didn't actually know that stat. You got to give a shout out to USC. I mean, they call it a curse from time to time, but they've had a bunch of good years, and now Sammy D's breaking through, I suppose. But it's a really interesting story, and I frankly don't think we're going to see it happen again. Mike McCagnon, actually, who was on our staff at Sumer Sports, he drafted Sam Darnold, and he told me, he checked all the boxes, and sometimes things just don't go the way you expect it. But I was discussing with Matthew Collar of the Purple Insider podcast. If you go check that out on YouTube, I joined him this week, and we kind of got into it because you really take a step back and you look at the end of the Seahawks regular season, and that offense was putrid. They couldn't throw the ball. They couldn't run the ball. They were winning with defense. Obviously, it's looked substantially better in the playoffs, but they've had a lot of special teams help, and they've had a lot of defensive help as well. I'm very interested in what it's going to look like against a Patriots team that is going to bring the heat, and it's probably going to win matchups on the interior and on the outside with Christian Gonzalez, Carlton Davis, who are playing extremely well. You got young safeties that are playing very well, and then you got Barmore and Williams, as aforementioned, who are absolutely causing ruckuses up front. I think this is going to be a little bit more difficult, or at least more strenuous and uncomfortable of a matchup than they had against the Rams defense. And when you really kind of break it down and you take a step back, and sure, the Super Bowl happened. Sure, they won a lot of close games, so forth and so on. The offense ended up looking pretty good. Sam Darnold was 15th in expected points added per play. That's league average amongst starting quarterbacks. I'm sure the Vikings wish that they had that as compared to J.J. McCarthy, but he was 18th in a Vikings uniform. He really did not get much better. He kind of is who he is. And what that means is if you have an absolutely elite defense and an offense player of the year, he can get you far in the playoffs. I do wonder what this is going to look like in the future.
All right, so let's bottom line this now. You kind of touched on certain elements and dynamics. Seattle is a 4.5-point favorite, over under 45.5. Entertainment purposes only, as my advice to my listeners is always just simply don't gamble. But for folks that are curious for the Sam Bruckhouse take, who do you like in the Super Bowl and why?
Look, I think you look at the Super Bowl, it's very rarely high scoring. The reason why is because it's set up to be kind of a longer game. You got a long halftime show. You get jitters in the first quarter. You got a lot of long commercial breaks. Nobody's going to be tired in this game. And I think that's what people don't realize. People may be more, mentally drained than physically drained because you're going to get those long commercial breaks. Everyone is going to be firing at least to whatever their potential is as of last week and however their body is at the end of the season. They should play up to that potential. The real question is both of these teams like to play slow. And in particular, the Seahawks they didn't necessarily do it last week. I got to give a shout out to Clint Kubiak. I've been riding him all season about running too much. He passed a lot last week, but I think against this particular Drake May-led team that is first in expected points added in passing, they're going to want to run the ball and try to be physical. I expect that there's actually not a lot of plays in this game. I kind of would go with the under on that, and I think you just got to kind of go with the Patriots. Look, I don't like betting against quarterbacks that I think are better than the other quarterback. I think Drake May is the MVP of this league. He struggled a little bit in the playoffs, but as we saw against the Broncos, when he makes plays when plays are needed, and as a result, I got to go with the Patriots in this game.
To win outright or just to cover?
Let's say to cover.
Okay. All right. Okay. Fair enough. All right. Before I say you lose, let's move off the game and talk about some storylines around pro football. Again, Jet fan here, and nothing bothered me more than watching Bill Belichick and Tom Brady dominate the landscape of pro football for as long as they did. But how do you keep Bill Belichick out of the Hall of Fame? I know he's going to get in, and this was his first opportunity, but what's your reaction to the Hall of Fame voters, the 10 or 11 that decided not to check that box? What's the Sam Bruckhouse take?
Look, quick and simple, you can't tell the story of football, period. You can't tell the story of the sport, much less the NFL, without Bill Belichick. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's politics. I think we got to look into how we can fix this.
Yeah, well said. Well said. All right, 2 openings left, Raiders, Cardinals. Who do you think gets these jobs?
It seems as if the Raiders are locked in on Clint Kubiak. I think that's actually a great fit for Fernando Mendoza. It'll be interesting to see if he is allowed to kind of do his thing. He seems to want the head coaching position. He seems to have interviewed this week. It'll be interesting to see. I'm intrigued about a team that has Colton Miller at the left tackle position, if healthy, a Fernando Mendoza, young quarterback. Under Clint Kubiak, who has kind of resuscitated the careers of Derek Carr and helped continue the resuscitation of Sam Darnold's career alongside making Brock Purdy a star. I think that's a good resume for a young quarterback. And Ashton Genty, that Rams running back room was not immensely successful, but they were explosive this year. And as a result, I think that's a good setup for Ashton Genty as well. I think it's a good fit. I think you get a play caller in there in a Raiders uniform. You got Max Crosby on the other side who could be a defense in himself. I think it's a good fit. I think it works out for the Raiders. The Cardinals is a little stickier. Are you going to go with Kyler Murray? Is Jacoby Brissett going to be your quarterback? What's going on with that defense? There's a lot of question marks. I don't think there's a clear-cut next guy now that Joe Brady was hired or promoted, however you want to call it, with the Buffalo Bills. That's kind of a black box. I'm interested to see how that one plays out.
Got one more for you because my brother just texted me, and I come from a split family, Jet fan, and then 2 brothers that are Giants fans. What expectation year 1 Harbaugh in New York?
I mean, you look at what Harbaugh has done with rushing quarterbacks. If Jackson Dart is healthy, he is going to be an offense that highlights him, Malik Neighbors, and Cameron Skattebo if Cameron Skattebo is healthy. Quietly, Andrew Thomas, the left tackle, had an all-pro year, just was not healthy at the beginning of the season, but he really locked it down to the left tackle position. I think they're going to get that offense in the right spot. It's just a matter of can they get a cornerback or a safety or someone who can help them back there. They've struggled immensely. The Ravens struggled at that immensely in the past 2 years. I think that from a roster building perspective is what you're going to see, but I think this team's going to be well run, and Jackson Dart's going to be in a position to succeed, and it's going to be up for him to do it, really.
Where can people go find your work, Sam?
Go check us out, Sumer Sports, SUMER Sports on YouTube. We got a lot of Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl content coming out. You can check out some of my player interviews. We just ask them to break down plays because football players love to watch football and they love to break down plays. We got some really cool stuff with Jalen Daniels, the Kansas quarterback, who folks in Utah may remember. We got Harold Perkins from LSU. We got a couple guys from the Senior Bowl. Really cool to pick their brain about some of their best plays. Go check that out on YouTube. SUMER Sports.
Thanks for the time, bud. Have a good weekend, and we'll chat soon.
Thank y'all very much.
Sam Bruckhouse, Sumer Sports, some good stuff there. We'll catch a break, and we'll bring in Max Brown. But before we get to a break, new client on the show, and pumped to have them on board because I actually work with them personally. Game Day Men's Health, you've probably heard me talk about them before. January is about to be over, and maybe you set a New Year's resolution to lose some weight or get in shape or maybe lose a lot of weight to make sure your health is where it needs to be. Well, I can just tell you at Game Day Men's Health, they can set a process for you and then guide you through the process that will get you results because that's what they did for me. A couple of years ago, I set a goal to get in the best shape that I've been in as an adult because it's harder as you get older. Breaking news. Started hitting the gym, doing yoga, eating clean. After a few months, I just wasn't making a lot of progress like I used to when I was younger because the progress was easier. And so I was frustrated, talked to a friend about it, and he said, have you ever tried to supplement testosterone? Which I hadn't. And he recommended Game Day Men's Health. So they're giving you currently the same deal they're giving me, actually a better deal because as a result of it being January, your discounted membership lasts you all year long. So what you do is you schedule a free consultation, and it is free at GameDayMen'sHealth.com like I did. They'll take a little bit of blood, and then they'll go over your levels with you, and they'll recommend their products that can help you where you're deficient, right? And so for me, it was testosterone therapy and peptides, and utilize those two. And within the next couple of months, my progress literally was 50% better, if not more. And the good news is 2 years later, I've kept the weight off, and I continue to maintain the shape that I'm in and worked hard to get there. But as a result of utilizing the process with Game Day Men's Health, I can promise you your results will be expedited. So GameDayMen'sHealth.com, it's the free consultation, but here's the kicker. They're offering you 50% off your membership all year long. So if you heard me talking about it like in November of last year and you waited, well, congratulations, because you get the discount and it's January, and my understanding of calendars is January is the first month of the year. So you get the discount all year long. I can promise you you're going to see results. It's a great deal. Same deal they give me at GameDayMen'sHealth.com. All right, we'll catch a break, but more football coming up next with Max Brown right here on ESPN 700. 10 days away, Super Bowl 60, Santa Clara, California, where the Seattle Seahawks find themselves a 4.5-point favorite over the New England Patriots. Let's get into some football with our next guest, Max Brown, on a Thursday. What's up, Max? How are you, man?
Spence, what's up, dude? I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I appreciate the time. I love that we have you on today. When I read that Sam Darnold is the first quarterback in the history of USC to start in a Super Bowl, I will admit I was blown away. I'm still kind of blown away. You're uniquely qualified to talk about the path of Sam Darnold, yes?
I am. Yeah. Once upon a time, a signal caller for the Trojans. Yeah, it's funny. I've been getting that question a couple times this week of like, were you surprised too when you read that? And I was obviously aware of it. And it's funny. I've spent a lot of the past like 7-8 years ever since I left USC, kind of defending that USC is not a school of just NFL busts, which I feel like people have changed that narrative now that Sam's obviously having more success and Caleb's in there having success now with the Bears. But like before that, like 2018, 19, 20, it was like, USC quarterbacks, all you do is get to the NFL and, they're busts. And I'm having to be like, well, wait a sec, guys. How many schools have great college quarterbacks that don't even sniff the NFL and or get the opportunity to start? Like if you're putting Mark Sanchez in that category, that dude actually led his team to an AFC championship game and had like a 12-year career, and Matt Barkley 11-year career. So let's lower our roll there a little bit.
So for our listeners' context here, Sam Darnold has a unique role in the life and career path of one Max Brown, does he not?
He does. Yeah, me and him battled it out for a couple of years. So he was, I was 2 grades above him. He entered USC in 2015. I remember meeting him that summer. We were good buddies in college, battled throughout the way. And then 2016, I started the first 3 games for USC, was a captain on that team. And then funny enough for your audience, I got benched before the Utah game, which was week 4 of that year. And the Utes still beat us, even though Sam started that game. But it was, a showing of, all right, this guy might be the next great USC QB.
What do you make, and as you know, I'm a lifelong suffering fan of the New York Football Jets, and when, as a result of Utah's Pac-12 tie back in the day, had a chance to see Sam play quite a bit. And when the Jets drafted him, I was genuinely excited. I'm like, okay, I feel like there's something here. I never felt like that with like Josh Rosen or certainly Zach Wilson. I thought Sam was going to be the guy, and obviously not just quarterbacks, but oftentimes players go to the Jets and it doesn't work out in no small part because of their own failures. Oftentimes it's organizational, but a lot of people dismissed him as somebody that maybe would make a career as a backup, and now he's starting in the Super Bowl. What stands out most to you?
Just how he weathered the storm. And I wrote a piece for The Athletic this week about kind of, what I think allowed him to do that. And obviously he's talented, and obviously there's a lot of factors that go into it, but I think his temperament is the one factor that really stands out to me. I use the word perspective or temperament, but it's a huge factor. I mean, Sam's a guy that, he's just a normal dude. He's the type of dude you'd want to have a beer with. He's the type of dude you'd want to hang out with. He's the type of dude that is the exact same at 19 when he was not even that big of a recruit coming into USC. And he's the same guy then as he is now, being a Pro Bowl quarterback and about to play in the Super Bowl. But to be more specific, I think his temperament was, I never got the vibe that he like so many quarterbacks wrap up their entire identity in being a quarterback. And, for my generation, we kind of learned from the Mamba mentality ways, which obviously has a lot of good, but the downside of that is when you wrap up your whole identity in the position and things don't go your way, it's a surefire way of losing confidence, losing yourself, getting discouraged, and going down a negative path. And I just felt like Sam was never that way, even when he had his struggles with the Jets, even after the struggles with the Panthers. I feel like internally he always, and he might not say this, but internally he was always like, no, I can play football at a high level. Things just haven't necessarily fallen into place for me, and hey, I'll keep showing up to work, and if it works out, great, but if it doesn't work out, I can live with that. And fortunately enough for him, I think the stop with the Niners was incredibly savvy to kind of reset his career. And then I was on shows that whole off season and on my own show as well when he went with the Vikings of like, get ready, it's the next Geno Smith path, right, or Baker Mayfield path at the time a couple of years ago when those guys resurrected their careers. And I was like, get ready. Darnold's going to be next in line. Get ready for him to be comeback player of the year. And Flacco ended up beating him out. But my point there is I think his mentality allowed him to weather the storm and not get discouraged and stay light and play free, and that's what's coming through this year for him and the Seahawks.
As we look back a little bit on the conference championship games before we kind of get into the Super Bowl, I got a couple college football questions for you too, Max, before we say you lose. What's fair to say about Jarrett Stidham? We have a ton of Bronco fans in the market, and when the conditions really turned, as I continue to joke, like Josh McDaniels actually called a play for Drake May to roll out and throw the ball out of bounds on third down. But a lot of Bronco fans are. And look, you lose Bo Nix, the conditions set in. I feel bad for the fan base. But what's fair to say about Jarrett Stidham?
Yeah, it's honestly just hard to really say anything, to be honest, because the elements were so gnarly. Like, I don't care if that's Tom Brady and Peyton Manning out there. I guess Peyton Manning was notably bad in cold weather games. But the point being, still, even if it was like a Hall of Famer, like that's tough to throw in any of those scenarios. So I guess I point back to the confidence and the words that Sean Payton said about Stidham in terms of, the trajectory for him moving forward. But I don't really know what to make of it. I think your point's spot on in that, like, that whole since midway through the third quarter. I mean, at that point, as a quarterback, your mindset's literally just don't make the catastrophic mistake. And Stidham did make that catastrophic mistake on the go ball that Gonzalez picked off on the right sideline. And so you fixate on, like, maybe that mistake and that decision. If, he doesn't make that mistake and, checks the ball down, do the Broncos have a shot? Maybe, maybe not. But I think it was just a crapshoot for any quarterback. And the fact that, it was kind of that way, like you said, for Drake May, and Drake's in the MVP conversation. So moving forward, I'd imagine obviously it's Bo Nix's squad. And I'd imagine that, from a backup quarterback perspective, the market's still, fairly bullish on what Stidham could be moving forward.
You feel like the future's bright in Denver with Sean Payton and that young quarterback, Bo Nix?
I do. I think the one thing that gives me hesitation is if I'm a member in the AFC, like, this feels like the easiest path from a playoff perspective that you're going to have. Like, it's hard to imagine a year in the next 5 years. Or I'll condense it down to maybe 3 years because we always like talking in 5-year windows, but the reality is things shift so quickly. But my point is it's hard to imagine a world where the Ravens are down, the Bills, they weren't maybe down, but they weren't as good as they've been in some of those years with Josh Allen. The Chiefs were down. The Bengals were down. You had a young Drake May and a relatively young Pat squad that was able to work your way through. Like, this, to me, I made this point to my wife, who's not really even a football fan, on the couch this past weekend. Like, that was probably the easiest AFC path that we've had, like, I don't want to say my lifetime. I'm 30 years old, but definitely in, like, recent memory in terms of what they had to get through. So my point from the Broncos perspective is, you'd have to think, like, man, this was the year, which obviously makes it frustrating that Bo Nix went down for with an injury. But teams like the Chargers, I'd like to think, are going to be right there again next year, and this feels like the path to do it if you were going to get it done.
All right. Moving over now, we already kind of discussed the Darnold stuff, and I'm a big fan of the Rams. It's hard not to be. I mean, McVay is obviously brilliant, and they're so fun to watch. When that offense is clicking, Puka Nacua played his college ball, of course, at Brigham Young, became the second player to go for 2,000 yards or more from scrimmage, including the playoffs, and the other one now plays for Seattle. His name is Cooper Kupp. But how did you digest the loss on the Rams side, and what do you think they look like moving forward as Matt Stafford is now 38?
Yeah, the former quarterback in me absolutely loves watching the Rams and loves watching Stafford. I call him the most underrated quarterback of this century. And it's kind of like, what? Underrated? Like, everyone knows Matthew Stafford's great. We do, and he got the one ring, which I'm glad he got that because it would have been tough from his, legacy standpoint if he didn't. But, like, he is next level. And, again, when I talk to any quarterback, like, the throws that he's making under duress, down in the game, tight windows, behind the, third and long, second and long kind of thing, like, it continues to amaze me. And it just feels like he's never talked about in the, like, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Burrow. It's always like he's like that fifth guy. And maybe some of that's just era and age and whatnot. But No, Stafford is next level. I'd have to think he's going to come back just given how well he's playing, how loaded that offense is, how young that defense is. I know the defense has to get better, but no, I'm hoping he comes back, and bullish on the Rams' future. And yeah, I guess question back to you too. What are BYU fans surprised about Puka Nacua being arguably the best receiver in the NFL? Like, did they see that trajectory, or are they surprised just like the rest of us football world?
Well, you're talking about a fan base that thought Jimmer Fredette was the next Larry Bird. So I don't know that BYU fans themselves are surprised, but I think anybody who's honest, look, been watching the kid since he was like 12. He's awesome. And he was awesome at BYU. But what was he, a fifth-round pick? I mean, there's a reason he was a mid-round pick. So I think a lot of people, and he comes from this great football family, I think a lot of people thought he was going to be good as we sit here today, Max. But sitting here potentially discussing maybe even one of the top, 5 players in the league, not just, wide receiver, I think that's caught a lot of people off guard for sure. But definitely happy for the kid, no doubt.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember one of the first games that I ever called for Pac-12 Networks was when Puka was a Husky up there at Washington, and that receiver room was loaded. I believe Dunze was on there, and both Jalen's that are now in the NFL. But I remember Puka like kind of having a hard time reading him a little bit in terms of like, is he just a big physical slot? Oh, does he have the top end speed to be an out and a height to be an outside guy? And I kind of felt that he was, like going to be somewhat of a tweener. But it's funny, as he's projected to the NFL, that like tweener nature has been his, superpower, because you can move him all over the field and super physical. And man, is he tough on the field, and then he seems like, the most wholesome guy off of it. So good for him.
Yeah, real good kid. So definitely happy for him. Future's bright. All right, let's move into the space now. 10 days away, Super Bowl 60. Seattle, 4.5-point favorite. And as I often say, my advice to my listeners is do not gamble. But for entertainment purposes only, what do you make of what we could potentially see? Who do you like to win this thing, and why?
I like the Hawks to win. I like the Hawks to win. That line is intriguing. 4.5 in an NFL game feels like a lot, just given how close a lot of these games are. But it honestly gives me a little bit of comparison to the take I had with Indiana versus Miami in the national championship game, in that if Miami was going to win, there was a very specific game plan or blueprint that it was going to take for them to win. Their pass rush had to show up. They had to condense possessions and things like that. And Indiana had tons of different ways to beat you. And that's how I view the Seahawks. I think they can beat you in so many different ways. It can be a ground and pound game with K9. It can be like we saw in the NFC Championship, more of a shootout and leaning on Sam Darnold. I think the Seahawks can win just leaning on their defense and playing ball control. So because of that, I think that I like the Hawks. And on the flip side for the Patriots, it feels like, Drake May and that passing attack has to be more explosive than we've seen in recent weeks to ultimately outduel these Seahawks.
Before we get over to the college game, everybody is discussing this dynamic of Bill Belichick not being voted into the Hall of Fame on his first opportunity. He's going to get in, obviously. And my whole thing, like, anonymity is a cloak for cowardness. Like, the internet is where cowards go to feel brave. They're posting, if you're one of these people that is posting behind an anonymous account to flex your muscles, you are a coward. So I just want to hear from the voters that didn't vote him in. Just stand up, own your vote, and then tell us why. Because at this point, we're looking to just draw conclusions. But what's the Max Brown take on this?
The Max Brown take on this is, so I'm a lifelong LeBron fan, and the line I've been using is Bill Belichick got the LeBron MVP treatment. And here's what I mean by that. In 2012, 2013, LeBron got all but like 2 MVP votes. And then I think it happened again like the very next year. And if you ask those 2 people that didn't vote for him who they voted for, there is no logical argument, in my opinion. And I know there's the whole LeBron, Michael Jordan, LeBron, Kobe debate and all that, but like, take that aside. To me, there was absolutely no debate. And what I think happens with those voters is they let their ego get involved, and they tell themselves, you know what, I don't like the way that LeBron flops, or I don't like the way that he handled the decision. So I'm going to be the one guy to just kind of put a thorn in his side and kind of stick it to him. And then in the grand scheme of things, you don't really notice it, because the reality is the majority of people are like, all right, LeBron's the MVP. I think the same thing happened with Bill Belichick, where I bet if you interviewed the collective group of 50 NFL Hall of Fame voters as a collective, they'd be like, oh, yeah, Bill Belichick should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like if you surveyed them objectively. But I would imagine what happened is there's enough voters in there that are like, you know what? I don't like the way that Bill Belichick's personal life's played out the past couple of years. Or maybe they're media members that are like, you know what? He wasn't very nice to me, or he was short with my colleagues and myself for 10 years. So you know what? I think there's levels to this thing. I'm going to save the first ballot tag for someone else and try to be like a little thorn in the side. And then, oh, by the way, you're like, and then all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, oh, crap, I'm not the only person that did that. There's 10 other people or 12 other people that did that. And you look back and you're like, that's silly because now he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer when in your own little world, you thought you'd like send a little message to him by being the one voter that held back. But then again, more people did that than they probably realized. That's the only explanation that I can come up with because everything I've watched, everything I've read from credible football sources of varying backgrounds, like everyone's in agreement that it's absolutely ridiculous that Bill Belichick's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. So the scenario I just laid out is the only scenario I can think of how this came to be.
Yeah, there's some interesting insight there that I hadn't considered. And like I said, he'll get in. It's just, unfortunately, they're going to move the, you bump the process back a year for guys that are waiting to get in as a result of what appears to be a really irresponsible thing at this point. But let's get over to a couple of college football topics, Max, before I say you lose. I know you're not as tuned in to Utah football as you were with the Pac-12 network once upon a time, but I know you watch a lot as well. And since you and I last spoke, Devin Dampier announced his intent to stay, even though his offensive coordinator and head coach from a year ago now live in Ann Arbor, which is still hard to process around here. But what do you make of that? What are you expecting one more year, Devin Dampier, Utah football?
Yeah, I think it's huge. You know, if I was a Utah fan, I would rather have my quarterback returning than any coach. You know, the reality is at any level of football, but, you know, especially in college football, to have a top-end quarterback is huge. Like you can much easier to figure out the coordinator and the play caller piece than it is the signal caller piece. So I view that encouraging. And, just especially in college football, when you're a quarterback that can have 1 year under your belt and then go into an off season where, and I know he had played football before Utah, obviously, but to go into an off season where you have those reps under your belt and that familiarity under your belt is huge. So I'd expect big things. And especially in a Big 12 where, you know, it's well documented that a lot of the top quarterbacks in the Big 12 got poached. When you talk about Sorsby, I know he switched Big 12 teams, but then Hoover going from TCU to Indiana as well. Like, you know, there's opportunity for that to be Utah's competitive edge in a conference where a lot of teams are going to have to figure out who their signal caller is.
Do you have, I mean, as somebody who, of course, played college football, do you have an opinion on where rivalry games should be played? I mean, we used to have Utah BYU final game of the season, and I loved it. And this year it's going to be on November the 7th, and it's going head to head with 5 other massive rivalry games from both the SEC and the Big Ten. And it will be the lowest watched out of those. It's 6 total games, and BYU Utah will be the lowest watched game nationally. I can guarantee it because they're powerhouse schools playing that day. And, you know, with the new day and age of college football, one of the pieces of collateral damage and ancillary issue is a lot of rivalry games have either gone away entirely or being moved around the schedule. What is kind of the Max Brown take on that?
Yeah, it's a good question because I hadn't thought about it through the TV ratings lens of maybe trying to position yourself for the biggest game of the week, so to speak. Yeah, so I grew up in the Seattle area, so in my brain as a kid growing up, the Apple Cup was just as big as the Super Bowl. That's not an exaggeration. That's just kind of the community that I was in. I didn't even grow up in a Husky or a Coug household, so for me it's been. For me, where I start is, hey, whatever it takes to keep the rivalry games intact. Obviously, that isn't as applicable with BYU and Utah because they're in the same conference and they don't have to worry about that when a lot of other schools are having to navigate conference realignment. But it certainly is a totally different feel from an Apple Cup perspective, having that game be in September in the sun rather than late November with sometimes conference implications on the line. and be cold, rainy, and snowy sometimes. I prefer later in the year or like end of the year, even if that comes at the expense of TV ratings and maybe the high profile nature of it. I just think there is something special when, one or both of the teams has something truly on the line and you're walking into rivalry week and that's the last hurdle you have to get over to contend for a championship or contend for a playoff berth. Like, to me, rivalry games are already special. That added layer has a totally different dimension that you don't get in early September. But, I get both sides of it, whatever it takes to keep the games going. And then, my other perspective on this, and this is the most noteworthy rivalry game this offseason, but is USC Notre Dame and that game going away. And I don't ever want to be like I get it, I guess is the best way to put it. It's so easy to be like, oh, USC's being weak here, or, oh, what's Lincoln Riley doing? I get it. USC has the hardest schedule in college football next year, per the schedule rankings. And if you're USC and Notre Dame on the other side gets to kind of handpick their schedule as an independent, and USC has to go through the gauntlet of the Big Ten, I hate it for college football. I hate it as a Trojan. But I totally get it from Lincoln Riley's perspective when, hey, going 10-2 and making the playoff would, save would allow him to keep his job versus 9-3 and missing the playoff probably means he's fired. So I think it's pretty black and white from my perspective in that regard.
Yeah, and the way it's shaping up, Max, and look, trying to predict a college football season, ever, let alone in January, is an exercise in futility. But the Big 12 released their schedule a couple of weeks back. And if you're a Texas Tech fan, book your hotel in Arlington December 4th. I mean, they avoid Utah. They avoid BYU. Their three, at least on paper, their four on paper toughest opponents are all in Lubbock. And Utah and BYU are probably the other two teams that maybe, exist at least in that stratosphere, even though Tech has proven to be kind of on a level of their own. And the Utah-BYU game here in Salt Lake on November the 7th could be like a virtual play-in game for the Big 12 championship, opportunity to play against Texas Tech. And the last game of the season, Utah's playing West Virginia, and I think BYU's playing Cincinnati. If they were playing each other, it would be awesome for the rivalry. It would be awesome for the conference because there's a good chance that's for a seat at the table,
Totally. And it's a good point. Like, I don't blame the Big 12, and I'm sure the ACC is doing the same thing in terms of, trying to be strategic with positioning on paper their favorite teams or the teams that are their strongest teams, I should say, for the path towards the playoff, which is, what we've seen. That's not nothing new. But the flip side of that to me is if it comes down to a conversation where, you're talking a, one-loss Big 12 team that may have had a cupcake schedule or lighter schedule or didn't have the test that these other two, the SEC or a Big 10 team had. Like, what is that? I guess we haven't had that point to me where the committee, and you could argue 2 years ago, but where that committee is saying, you know what? No, we're taking a 9-3 SEC or Big 10 team into the playoff over a two-loss team from the Big 12 or ACC, certainly, but even maybe a one-loss team. And the reason I say that, and I'm sure your audience is like, Max, get out of here, like one loss in the Big 12, like that's got to give you a path in there. But I say that because that to me is what saves the USC Notre Dame rivalry. If the committee can show that, like, hey, if we're going to schedule these out-of-conference games and lose, that then we get the benefit of the doubt from a getting inside the playoff conversation, which I know there's a lot of levels in that, and that's where people start talking about expansion and getting to 16 or 20 teams and whatnot. But that to me is a critical factor for where these out-of-conference games stand.
Last thing, I'll set you loose on this. Fernando Mendoza's second career start at Cal was here in Salt Lake against Utah, and that was a good Utah team. But I can remember I was there at the game, and I remember watching the kid play. I'm like, he's awful. Like, he's got no shot at being a college quarterback. And now he's a national champ who won the Heisman Trophy, and he's going to be the number one overall pick. How did this happen, Max?
It's funny, and I like to think I'm uniquely qualified for this question. I was literally looking back through some archived game boards that I had back in 2023. So I called Fernando Mendoza's first start in October of 2023, Oregon State at Cal. And again, I was looking at the call sheet from that day, and walking into that game, Cal was going back and forth between two different quarterbacks. And so we were kind of like, oh, Cal's got a quarterback competition or a quarterback uncertainty, like, ooh, is it going to be quarterback A or quarterback B? And then we walk into the meeting room, and Justin Wilcox is there, and he's like, guys, just so you know, we're going with the third guy this week. We're gonna test him out. It's redshirt freshman, Fernando Mendoza. He's like, that's the last guy we took in our recruiting class. He's like, I got a tip from a quarterback coach that I had a relationship with, that he's like, hey man, you should take a flyer on this Mendoza kid. And I think Cal's existing quarterback commit they had in that class, like, flipped last second kind of thing. So it was kind of a, hey, we'll take whatever's out there. So Fernando Mendoza was, and I think the story is well documented, but Fernando Mendoza was on a path to, I believe it was Yale, or it was somewhere in the Ivy League. And then he just kind of stumbled into the opportunity at Cal. And then the best story I have from that interaction is, so we walk into the Friday production meeting, and Justin Wilcox is kind of like chuckling and like smiling when he's talking about Fernando Mendoza. And obviously now the college football world sees Mendoza's personality, but at the time they were like, yeah, this guy's like geeked up, and people are calling him the mayor of Berkeley already. And he goes, we didn't tell Fernando he was starting until this morning, being like the Friday before the Saturday game, because we were too worried that he'd get too amped up and too geeked up if we told him on like Monday or Tuesday kind of thing, which again, in hindsight, makes sense now that you see all the Fernando Mendoza interview clips. But if you had told me that he was going to win the Heisman back in October 2023, I would have laughed at you. I didn't even know who this guy was, and he wasn't even on my radar. But he was great. I say it to this day. He's the best, and I said this even before he was went on the run that he did this past year. It was the best, most thoughtful and entertaining player interview we had in a production meeting. I was like 27 years old, and he was calling me Mr. Brown the whole time. So classic Fernando Mendoza.
Good stuff, man. Yeah, hell of a story. Fun to watch. Max, thanks for the time, man. Have a great weekend, and we will get you back on soon.
Of course. Thanks, Spence.
All right, our buddy Max Brown, who was a quarterback at USC once upon a time, and a young freshman named Sam Darnold took his job, who's now starting in the Super Bowl. Max is great, one of my favorite college football analysts. Our buddy from the Pac-12 Network is now on ESPN, and he's on social media, very active on TikTok, I believe, is his main deal, but social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, I think it's at Max Brown 4. So definitely check it out. All right. The PGA Tour is back, and let's see here. Brooks Koepka is playing in the Farmers Insurance Open. Torrey Pines North Course, there in California, beautiful spot. So I want to give you a PGA update. First, I want to let you know that you can get custom fitting at Uinta by Worldwide Golf for the new Cobra Optim drivers. The new Cobra Optim is the first driver to optimize POI and MOI, which you need. Experience straighter drives and more robust distance. Uinta Golf by Worldwide Golf. Get there. Your leader, let's see, is everybody? There's a few golfers still out on the course, but Justin Lower carded a 63 today. He's your leader in the clubhouse. He's followed by Max Griesman, who carded a 64. Justin Rose is still on the course. He's 8 under through 14. Holy smokes. Maverick McNeely, Steven Yeager at 7 under par. Then it's Mark Hubbard, Sayid Tagala, Max McGreevy, Jake Knapp, Davis Thompson at 6 under par. I cannot find Brooks, so it looks like he didn't play very well. Brooks Koepka 2 over par today, which ties him for 115th, which is not good. A lot of good golfers struggling. Xander Schauffele was the favorite. He's 2 over par as well. Max Homa 3 over par. Good to have the PGA Tour back, and fun to see Brooks Koepka, back in the fold. We'll catch a break. Coming up next, it's a special guest. We've been talking about the PBR, the professional bull riding event coming up. Cade Madsen will join us, a 20-year-old professional bull rider from right here in Honeyville, Utah. And then we'll go from there. Busy Thursday show, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Want to remind you to experience the heart-pounding thrill of professional bull riding at the Delta Center, February 6th through the 7th. Tune in to the Sean O'Connell Show at noon for your chance to win a pair of tickets to the event. More details can be found on ESPN700sports.com. Let's welcome in our next guest, Cade Madsen, 20-year-old professional bull rider from Honeyville, Utah. Cade, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. How are you, sir?
I'm well, and you definitely do not have to call me sir, but that's very kind of you. So let's get to know you a little bit. You know, a ton of respect for the craft, no doubt about it. How'd you get into bull riding, Cade, and tell us about your path?
Yes, sir. So I come from a rodeo family. Both my parents, they grew up rodeo in the Western background and things like that. And so, you know, riding horses, roping, riding bulls, it's kind of in my blood. So that's kind of what I was drawn to, and it's worked out pretty good for me. So
it sounds like it. How old were you when you first had the courage to hop on one of these animals?
So I started, like a lot of the kids, started riding sheep when I was 3. Got on my first sheep when I was 3, and I remember being pretty scared, and then, you know, progressed up towards calves and steers, and then eventually got on my first big bull when I was 13. And, you know, as anything, there's always nerves there, but, you know, I was able to fight through that. So, yes, sir.
When did you have just like the inclination that you could be really good at this? Was it very early on, or did you gain confidence as you kind of went throughout the path?
For me personally, like the self-confidence and, you know, recognizing that I could probably make a career out of this probably came when I was around 15 years old, when I started, you know, going to some of the local bull ridings and things like that. And, you know, recognized my abilities and, you know, realized it was something that I wanted to take seriously. So.
All right. You referenced that you come from a family lineage. Tell me about that. Are we talking dad, uncles, brothers? What does that look like, Cade?
Yes, sir. So my dad, he grew up, he rode bucking horses and things like that. And he's got a couple brothers that also did the same thing. And then my mom, she comes from, you know, a rodeo background, grew up running barrels. Her dad raised race horses and stuff like that. And I have an older brother, Briggs. He rode in the PBR as well. And so, you know, me and him, we've grown up riding bulls and, you know, roping and things like that.
So I come from a basketball family, and I'm the oldest of 6 kids with 3 younger brothers and a father who liked to mix it up as well. And I have legendary stories of competing with my family on the basketball court. Are you guys competitors? Do you guys like to go up against each other?
Yeah. When I got to travel with my brother a bit, you know, it was always a friendly competition, but, you know, we're all working towards the same goal. So, you know, it helps you in the practice pen and things like that, have a little bit of competition, but yes, sir.
All right. So let's get into this. It's been said that in this sport, there are 2 athletes. Tell us about the animal athletes of the PBR and how they're scored.
Yeah. So there's a couple judges out in the arena, and they judge 2 things. So they judge the bull from 1 to 50, how well he performs, and then they judge the rider, how well we perform 1 to 50, and they combine that score, and so it's a possible of 100 points.
Ah, I see. And I'm told that the PBR really takes care of these animals. Yeah. So tell us about a day in the life of these bulls, the training, care, and nutrition.
Yes, sir. So I'm no expert, but the bulls, just like you said, they're just as much as athletes as we are as the bull riders, and so they get the best care. And the PBR does a good job at you know, bringing the 40 best guys in the world against the 40 best bulls, and makes for a good show. So.
All right, let's get into what makes the PBR event taking place exciting. What? So our listeners that maybe have never seen this before, because obviously if you've been to an event, if you're part of the community, they know what they're in for. But for people that haven't experienced this, what will their experience be if they're doing it for the first time?
Yes, sir. So, you know, we're fortunate here in Utah. We have some pretty good rodeos and fairs throughout the summer, and, you know, they showcase all of the events from the roping to the, you know, the buck and horse riding to the bull riding. But, you know, for the lovers of the bull riding, you got to wait till the very end of the rodeo to see the bull riders. But the PBR, it's strictly bull riding. So when it starts at 7:45, after intros, they're bucking bulls till the end of the night. So it's super action-packed, and just like I said, you get to see, you know, best guys in the world against the best bulls. So.
My producer is very much an expert in this space in a way that I am not. So I've asked him this question. I'm going to ask you. What are the key elements? What makes a great bull rider? I mean, the obvious things seem to be grip strength, core strength, but what are the things that go into the DNA and the makeup of a bull rider like yourself who can win championships?
Yes, sir. It definitely takes a bit of talent, but first and foremost, it takes a lot of dedication and the will to win. When you make up your mind that that's something that you want to do, you do whatever it takes, whether it's working out in the gym or practicing, things like that. So. Yeah, just a lot of motivation and some discipline.
Did you play any other sports growing up, or was this always just kind of the thing that you loved the most?
Always just, rode bulls and rodeoed and things like that. Never really got into any sports. So this has been, pretty much my entire life. So,
am I reading that you are recently back from a mission? Is that the case?
Yes, sir.
Where did you serve, Cade?
I served in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been home for just about 3 months.
You've only been home 3 months. Look, I made it 8 days on the mission, so I'm no expert. But my guess is you weren't able to practice bull riding while you were serving a mission. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. So I didn't get to ride any horses, ride any bulls, or anything for the 2 years that I was out there. And so, yeah, it was a bit of an adjustment not being able to do that because I've been riding horses, riding bulls my entire life, and then didn't get to, but. Got on a lot of bulls and horses and things like that when I came back from my mission, so it's been good.
Is it a little bit? I mean, I know it's not riding a bike because it is a bull that could kill you. But were you able to just ultimately get back to where you were? Did you get the feel back pretty quickly?
It didn't feel like it. It felt pretty unnatural for the first couple. I got on about 60 bulls in the first month that I was home. And so it definitely took some time, but I've been, very blessed to have a pretty fast track and getting back to the biggest tour of the PBR. So
I'm reading that you won this event 3 months after you came home from the mission. Is this correct?
Yes, sir. It was the PBR event, the Velocity event in St. Louis, Missouri. First PBR event that I entered back and was fortunate and blessed enough to be able to come out with the win there.
Well, Kate, if you won 3 months after coming home from the mission, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you acclimated pretty quickly, young man.
Yeah, it's definitely it's been a ride for sure. A lot of blessings and a lot of things that's had to happen, but it's been a good couple months to say the least.
Did you have and maybe this is brother's father, but did you have a mentor growing up who was kind of like your main coach that helped you become elite at this craft?
Yes, sir. It's been my dad for both me and my brother all grown up. He's always been our biggest supporter, as well as my mom, doing whatever it takes to help me and my siblings to be successful in whatever we wanted to do. As well as my brother, he's 5 years older than me. He also served a mission, and so he's been one of my biggest motivators and somebody that I've looked up to the most. Pretty much my whole entire career. Do you compete in any other events, or do you stick with the bull riding? No, so I do all the events. I ride all three rough stock. So what that is I ride barebacks, broncs, and bulls, and then I rope and things like that. So you're like a complete horseman then. You're not just a one-trick pony, and no pun intended there. Yeah. I try to. Yeah. Okay. I enjoy just being a cowboy. Being horseback and things like that, and luckily the PBR has done a good job to be able to allow us bull riders to make a living at something that we love doing. So. I think a lot of people, have seen probably social media videos or YouTube videos of bull riders being in a rather perilous situation, whether it's an accident or something along those lines. Have you ever found yourself in a tough spot as a result of a bad fall or something like that? Yeah, it definitely comes with the sport. I've been pretty fortunate and haven't had too many injuries throughout my career, but there has been a couple situations where I've gotten in, a bad spot and had to take some time off, but I've been pretty lucky. So, what are the goals? Because again, you're only 20 years old. You've got your whole life in front of you. What does your career path look like? What do you hope that you'll accomplish in this sport? Yes, sir. I know that it's a young man's game, and I don't plan or I know that I can't do it forever, but my goal is, I want to be a world champion. And so over the next couple of years, that's what I'm going to dedicate my time and efforts to. So, yes, sir. World champion. Okay. We got your back. You reference, we'll be pulling for you for sure, but you reference it's a young man's sport. In sports like
basketball or football or baseball, the prime is thought to be like 26 to like 30. What's the prime of a horseman's career?
Yeah, so professionally, you can start your career at 18, start entering and things like that. And so it's anywhere from, it depending on how long you want to do it and how disciplined you are, probably anywhere from 18 to 30 is about prime bull riding age, and typically where you see bull riders, ranging on the age. So.
Tell me about, I'm very curious as you travel around as far as the community with other bull riders and what that's like, and just kind of what you guys do if you're traveling when you're actually not, riding a horse or a bull.
Yeah, it's definitely different for everybody. I'm Utah native, and so there's not too many bull riders or cowboys that come out of Utah. There's a lot of really good ones, but for me, it was always my brother. A lot of the Brazilian guys that come over to, the United States to ride bulls, they live in Texas. And so, it's pretty much a family when we go on the weekend. Everybody's pulling for each other and, wants each other to win, even though we're against each other. So it always just kind of depends, varies from different people to.
What do you like to do when you're not doing this? What do you do in your free time?
Ride horses and spend a lot of time with my family. It depends on the time of year. Winter time we haven't had much snow, but I like to, go snowmobiling or snowboarding, anything I can do. But most of the time it's, being horseback, roping, or whatever it is. So,
is there a venue that you have not performed in that you would like to? Is there one venue that comes to mind that like, hey, I want to win this event in this spot?
Yeah, I mean, as we're coming up on the Salt Lake PBR, that's one that I've watched a lot as I was a kid and always dreamed of riding there. And so it's a blessing to be able to ride there in a couple weeks. Arena that's really famous, my hometown state. And so it was a goal of mine on my mission that I wanted to be back to be able to not just ride in it, but to be able to win it. So my goal and my plan is to come out with a win after the weekend in Salt Lake City.
That a guy. Is your brother riding professionally? Does he compete on the circuit?
He did. He doesn't too much anymore. He had an injury this last summer, and he's starting his family and things like that. So he doesn't go too much anymore.
Okay, fair enough. Well, look, this has been a pleasure, Kate. I appreciate it. It's been fun to get to know you a little bit and learn this path. Best of luck at the event coming up here in Salt Lake, and most importantly, stay safe, okay?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
All right, Cade Madsen, 20-year-old professional bull rider from Honeyville, Utah. I don't think I've ever been called sir so many times. What a sweet guy. What a nice kid.
Just got back from the mission. A Utah kid. You're going to get that. Very courteous. I like it.
I love it how he's like, yeah, it took me a minute to acclimate off the mission. I'm like, dude, you won the event 3 months after you got home.
Yeah, no, he got right back to it. He got right back to it, and of course is primed and ready to go for the shootout. That's what they're calling it at Salt Lake City.
Let's see here. So he rides bareback broncos, and does that translate to bulls? If you come up riding the barebacks, does that translate to riding the bulls?
I mean, all the rough stock events do. It's listen, you're trying to stay on for 8 seconds in any which way. Now there are a few different parts of bareback and saddle bronc and bull riding that are different, whether you have to mark out when you're getting out of the chute. It's saddle bronc is a little more official in that way, whereas bull riding and bareback are really quite you're just hanging on for dear life. Now that being said, how it looks, if you're just getting flung around on the back of the horse, it's going to affect your score regardless of if you stay on for 8 seconds or not. So it's a scored event. You want to make it look pretty in a certain way as well. But yeah, there's a lot of help that bull riding will give you for the other rough stock events.
I saw the Luke Perry movie 8 Seconds, Porter, so I'm uniquely qualified to discuss this.
For you, Lane.
1994.
Great movie.
Curious, do you think, I should have asked Cade this, are you counting to 8 as you're riding these bulls? I mean, do you think there's a clock in the head?
There's probably more like a quarterback where it's there, but it's not like you're sitting there 1, 2. You're more so, especially with a rank bull, you're waiting for that thing to turn on a dime. These big 2,000-pound animals can change direction on a dime. So if you're sitting there counting in your head, you might get taken for surprise, and you'll be on your head quicker than anything.
It seems like a rather dangerous craft. I'm just reading about this accident his brother was in. Holy smokes. So according to this article, Briggs, who's the older brother of Cade, competed in the PBR, rode alongside Cade on the Thunder during the 2023 playoff run. He was with the Nashville Stampede, Briggs was. He smashed into the bull's head with a collapsed lung, broken ribs, and a brain bleed. Was air flighted to special care. According to what I'm reading, he's made a full recovery and now works full-time for his dad. His wife was pregnant at the time, so I'm glad that Briggs is okay. My goodness gracious. So, bottom line, appreciate his time today. It was fun to get to know him. We have the event coming up, so experience the heart-pounding thrill of PBR, professional bull riding at the Delta Center, February 6th and the 7th. Tune in to the Sean O'Connell Show for your chance to win a pair of tickets to the event. More details can be found at ESPN700sports.com. All right, we'll catch a quick break. Big one coming up for the Utah women's basketball team. They're taking on BYU after a nice win just a couple of nights ago. They should be cracking that top 25 if they can handle business on Saturday. So we'll bring in one of our favorites, Coach Pete. Gavin Peterson will join us. We'll move over to Sports Court after that. We'll get back to some NFL and college football in the 5 o'clock hour. We'll say goodnight at 6. Busy Thursday drive. It's good to have you along for the ride right here on ESPN 700. Night off for the Utah Jazz tonight. They're going to welcome in Brooklyn on Friday. Yegor Demon back in town, of course, played his college ball at BYU. Jazz lost to the Warriors last night, 4 straight L's for the Jazz. The NBA trade deadline is a week away. The Super Bowl 10 days away. So a fun time of year for sports. A lot to do on the show today. We'll get back to some pro football and get you ready for the Super Bowl in the 5 o'clock hour. But a big one coming up. We got a rivalry game matchup on Saturday at 2 o'clock. The Utah women will travel to take on BYU after a really nice win over a good West Virginia team. Let's welcome in the head coach of the Utah women's basketball team. Always good to have Coach Gavin Peterson on the show. Hello, Coach. How are you?
Good. How's it going, Spence? Always good to be on.
It's going well. I appreciate the time. So you couldn't have had 2 more different performances since you and I last spoke, with a rough one against Tech, but a really good bounce-back win against West Virginia. What are the main differences? What did you see, and how proud of your team? How proud are you of your team for bouncing back like that?
Yeah, Texas Tech on Saturday, we actually had kind of a long week, a one-game week with the Big 12 schedule, allowing us to kind of get that bye on the Wednesday. We got a lot of rest needed. We had some bumps and bruises, got those taken care of. But in all honesty, maybe that time off away from competitive basketball kind of hurt us. Whatever it was, we just weren't ourselves against Tech. We were kind of disconnected on both ends of the floor, didn't shoot the ball well, just kind of out of rhythm. So, we addressed it after that game on Sunday, had a good practice Monday, and our kids came ready to play, and they battled their tails off on Tuesday against, like you said, a very good West Virginia team. So really proud of the resiliency, the grit that our team was able to show, and we just came through with a great win that will really bode well come NCAA tournament selection time.
Now that we have 21 games in the books and we're in the bulk of conference play now, and still a good portion of the schedule left, we'll get to BYU in a moment. What have you learned about your group? What transpires? And look, I know so much of this is shot making and obviously health as well, but what transpires when you guys are winning games? What's the difference between a Texas Tech loss and a West Virginia win?
Yeah, I think honestly, just playing for each other, playing connected, not worrying about the minutes you're playing, the shots you're getting. It's just a collective energy and a collective focus, and that intensity exudes out there on the floor. The fans can see it. People watching TV can see it. And that's playing Utah basketball, and that's when we're at our best. The other thing is I think the resiliency this team has been able to show. We have not been 100% for most of the year, probably dating back to middle of December. So they've been able to just kind of fight through those little nagging injuries. Some of our players are actually getting healthier with time, and that's a good thing. So we want to make sure that we're as healthy as we can be towards the home stretch in February and really peaking as we head into Big 12 tournament play. But I'm just really proud of how, regardless if somebody's out with an injury, out with a sickness, they really rally around each other, and that's when we're at our best.
How healthy are you right now? How healthy is the group right now?
Well, we're healthy. Everybody's dealing with bumps and bruises here and there.
Sure.
We have 2 players out. Cameron Mafua hurt her foot. She's in a boot. Ella Todd, who's redshirting this year as a freshman, had season-ending surgery early in the year. So those 2 are out for the next game. We have a player out with sickness right now, but should be back. But other than that, we're healthy. So we're really looking forward to, piggybacking off the way we played against West Virginia and taking that down with us to Provo and really getting after it there.
When we last spoke, you discussed a couple of things you wanted to clean up, namely turnovers and shot selection. Where are we at in that process?
Yeah, the turnover department, we're still, it's like a bakery. We're still turning those out. We need to do a better job of eliminating some of the casual turnovers. When you want to play at a fast pace, you want to play up and down, you're going to have some turnovers when you're trying to make things happen especially in fast break opportunities in transition. But we got to eliminate the lackadaisical ones, picking up our dribble, getting trapped in the corner, the one-handed casual passes, not meeting the basketball, whether it's inside the post or on the perimeter. So I truly believe, and our staff believes, that we can get down from averaging 19 turnovers a game to possibly getting closer to the 12, 14 mark. And the sooner we do that and we can find some consistency in that department, I think the better we will be, especially in putting points on the board.
How analytically driven are you, Coach? I mean, look, I know that the numbers and the analytics have spilled into pretty much every portion of the game, and I know everybody uses them in one way, shape, or form. I find this pretty interesting, though, because I was watching the BYU-Arizona game last weekend, and Arizona doesn't shoot a lot of threes. They hung 86 on BYU while taking, I think, 12 threes. It's mid-range, it's free throws, and it's always an interesting debate where a lot of people do believe you hunt threes and you go for layups and you expedite bad offense with free throws and you stay away from the mid-range. How much does stuff like that drive your decision-making as a coach?
Yeah, I think, back when Coach Roberts was here at the helm here, we kind of took a deep dive into the analytics, and that's really been a successful component of Utah women's basketball. So we definitely still pay a lot of attention to it. We definitely want our shot quality at the end of games, whether it's a make or a miss, to be better than our opponents. So, we are trying to put pressure at the rim, trying to get those easy layups, easy post-ups, want to get fouled, get to the free throw line. And we want to be able to, if we collapse defenses, be able to kick out the three. I will say there are a few players on our team that are very capable and definitely can take that pull-up jump shot because they can shoot it and make it at a pretty high clip. So, alluding to how you described Arizona men's basketball, they got a bunch of guys who can, really make a living at that mid-range area. Well, we might not have a whole team roster of that. But we do have a few people who can really go to work there. Lonnie White, Maddie Wilkie, Brooke Walker, to name a few that really they have the green light to hit that mid-range pull-up jump shot. But a lot of times we tend to pass those shots up just because we see a really great shooter spotting up on the three-point line. They're wide open. We pass up a good shot for a great shot. And that's where the analytics get to work for us.
Is there a number of threes that because and you've got a lot of players that can shoot it. Some teams have 2, 3. It feels like a lot of players on your roster, both are, as you referenced, have the green light and have the capability. Yeah. Is there a general number that you want to get to at the end of every game as far as 3-point shots taken?
No, we kind of don't worry about a total, but we're going to take them as long as you're giving them to us. We talk about in our program the shot quality. A good shot is an open shot. In terms of the analytics, the best shot you can get is a wide open kick out three, and so we'll shoot those all day long. We're not going to take 10 off the dribble 3-point field goal attempts per game, but we definitely will take a lot of catch and shoot 3-point field goals. So typically we want to make anywhere from 10 to 13 a game. We're around those numbers when we are playing really well and moving the ball and making the extra pass. And then there are times when, you got to give the credit to the defense where they hold us under 6. And a lot of times those are games that the results might not end in our favor. So it's kind of a give and take. Sometimes we have to take what the defense gives us and maybe shoot a little bit more at the rim. And then there's times where we're just going to continue to let it fly.
How much of and Coach Gavin Peterson is with us, the Utah women will take on BYU coming up. We'll get there. How much of your personal offensive philosophy are simply concepts and principles that you believe in, and how much of it is predicated on the roster that you've been able to construct?
Yeah, a little bit of both because, we recruit to a system. So we're just not recruiting kids and then kind of having to redefine our system or make a player who doesn't really fit what we're doing and then try to do something new. We recruit to the system. So it's really easy. Now things and execution, we can do a little bit more here and there based on personnel. For example, with Kyra Evans and Evie Otto being able to facilitate because they're such good passers and have such good basketball IQ, we're able to run a little bit of a different type of offense where they're touching the ball on the perimeter, making those reads, making those passes, getting assists, as opposed to in the past with an Alyssa Peely, Jenna Johnson, or Maya Torre, with them really trying to go to work with their back to the basket. So with that, we can evolve a little bit, but at the end of the day, our system is still going to be our system. We recruit to it. We want versatility. We want people to be able to stretch the defense, play inside and out. And that seems to work for us, and we're going to continue to do it as we plug through and compete here in the Big 12.
All right, give me a thought on BYU. Actually, no, before we get to BYU specifically, I like to ask all of the Utah coaches I interview the same question. Do you coach your team differently during a preparation period for your rival? I mean, is there an extra added emphasis to the importance of winning this game?
Yeah, I think there is. I would say probably maybe 8 years ago when we were in different conferences, having just come from the West Coast Conference, being in the same conference as the team down south, I was really, like, this is our game, and probably a little too intense. It wasn't until probably year 3 here that it's like, okay, back then we're in the Pac-12. The result of that one game has nothing to do with our season outlook or our season's goals. So why am I, as a coach, making it more of an intense game? And that was kind of okay, yeah, I guess I'm as older, I'm getting wiser maybe. So from that moment on, I kind of have been able to remove the emotion side of things. Now we're in the same conference. So last year was the first year we have to play each other twice. And I think our team managed that really well. Now, make no mistake about it. Our players, they're into it. The fans, they're into it. But in terms of a preparation standpoint, we really do trust the process of what we're doing. So today was a lot about us and our execution and what we want to do with certain things, components of the game. And then tomorrow we'll dive a little deeper into the weeds, into the details with the team down south, and we'll get after it from there.
Oh, you said team down south. We heard it. Coach Peterson, team down south.
I try, I have fun with the rivalry. I really do. So I don't write in blue pens. I do not utter those letters as much as I possibly can. It'll slip. I'll every now and again say it, but it's having fun. I really am. There is no hatred. There is no, there is a competitive fire. We want to play them. We want to beat them. But I have fun with the rivalry. I really do.
Does the venom and animosity, and look, sometimes during the football week, the rivalry week, it's just like everybody needs to take a deep breath and everyone calm down, okay? Like, these are young people literally playing a child's game. If you attach your identity to the outcomes of such things to the point where you're mistreating humans, I think we've kind of lost the plot a little bit. Do we sense any of this with the BYU-Utah dynamic when it comes to the women's basketball rivalry?
I think it's just very highly competitive. It's intense. I'm sure the players have a lot more intensity and a lot more on the line because they're the ones in between the lines, pouring their heart and soul into the game. So they probably have a different answer for you. For me, I want to make sure I have my head straight. I want to make sure that I'm able to make those in-game adjustments to put our team in the best position to pull out a victory. So I try not to get too worked up about it, especially in the game. But, easier said than done because those are the games you really want to win, especially not only is it a rivalry, but it's an in-state rivalry separated by, miles, right? And, at the same time, too, recruiting. We all recruit very similar kids, and we want to get a leg up in that battle as well. So a lot of bragging rights, but also standings in the Big 12, and then also recruiting and trying to win the state in that recruiting battle as well.
Do you have, now that we have a couple of years with the Big 12, I've got bracketology up, and as we talked about last time, I know this is basically bookmark, and you look at it every day. I kid, of course. So we always try to analyze strength of conference and who's got the best conference. Right now, the Big 10 would have 12 teams in, SEC 11, ACC 9, and you guys would have 8. So it feels like there's a lot of parity throughout the course of the landscape of the women's basketball just ecosystem with 4 excellent conferences, 2 Big East teams. But now that we have a couple of years of a little bit of a sample size of the Big 12, what stands out most to you about how you've acclimated to the conference?
Yeah, I think, we're acclimating kind of like we had thought. I think last year we might have thought we were going to do a little bit better. But, maybe that's just a credit to the Big 12 in terms of the teams from top to bottom, bringing it every single night. I think the versatility in our league, not only with the players, but also the coaches, the great coaching and the different styles of play that each program brings to the table is unique and different. So, as coaches, we got to get ready to prepare for different styles of play on any given night. And, with short turnaround time, it's, the cream rises to the top. And I truly believe we are an 8 to 9 team league. And if you look at some of the net rankings, it really is. There's a cluster of teams from the ACC and the Big 12. And, obviously I'm biased because I'm in the Big 12, but I think a lot of those teams in that bubble or in that little area of that net, I truly believe that the Big 12 should be represented in the NCAA tournament. And, we have it's in our hands. I think the same can be said for the team down south and a few other teams like in Arizona State, Colorado, Kansas State. We just got to play out the rest of the season. And, I think we can get a lot of teams in and those teams can advance as well.
The storyline concerning women's basketball over the past 3, 4, 5 years has been really fascinating for me to follow and watch. My father was he was on the board for the New York Liberty back in 1997, where Teresa Witherspoon was the starting point guard. And I grew up in Connecticut, where of course UConn resides, a great both men's and women's basketball school. But, the Caitlin Clark effect, Coach, as you know, has brought a lot more attention to this sport on both levels, quite frankly. I mean, the ratings for the NCAA tournament run that they had with her there just through the roof. And I have a brother and a sister-in-law that live in Carmel, Indiana, and their teenage boys wear Caitlin Clark jerseys and shirts to school, which, if I'm honest, in 1997, I would not have thought that was going to be a thing that would permeate throughout the culture the way that it has. How, as somebody that's been in the sport for 20 years, how have you digested the growth of this game on both levels over the past 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I think it's been an amazing rise. I think when networks and the media and the national coverage, when they shine the light and give these young women a stage to perform on, it's a beautiful thing. That's what I was drawn to when I was in college looking to become a basketball coach and break into the profession. Like, I loved everything about the women's game, from being fundamentally sound, from being very skilled. The athleticism piece has just grown since I started back in 2000. It's really gotten a lot better. The style of play is very up tempo, and those are the type of players like a Caitlin Clark. And before her, it was Sabrina Ionescu. Before her, Diana Taurasi. There have always been really good, dynamic, impact playmakers. And now it's so cool because they're on TV a lot more. People now on a nationwide, they're getting to see it for themselves. And after they give it a go, it's like you want to watch and you want to come back. And I think that in and of itself has been able to take our game to the next level. So I think it's going to continue to rise. I think the quality of play and the quality of basketball players are even better than it was, and the parity is even getting better. And at the same time, I think we got to continue to make sure we showcase the star quality and the storylines that go hand in hand with some of these players, because we don't have the one and dones like the men might have. So we've got to do a good job of promoting that, telling those stories. And we had a player in our program, Alyssa Peely, and she was phenomenal, and she was such somebody who impacted so many lives just because of her ethnicity, not only what she did and how she played, but what she looked like. So to me, those are the stories that, man, it's amazing. It's such a great platform for these young women to be able to showcase their skill set and be able to touch a lot of lives.
From an outside observer, Coach, in my seat, I just try to cover the stories that people want to talk about, and there are metrics that indicate, this is interesting for people, so let's dig into this and learn about it. And just coming from somebody who, again, has been around women's basketball since the late 90s and has kind of watched it kind of grow and evolve, I've been a little bit confused about what I would perceive to be gatekeeping, and I don't know if it's jealousy because Kaylin is getting all this attention. And, one of the things that I pushed back on is somebody will send out a video of, like, somebody setting a hard screen on Kaylin and she falls down. And it's like, oh, man, they're bullying her. I'm like, no, that's basketball. It's how it works. Yeah. The Jordan rules, the great book written about the Detroit Pistons basically taking Jordan's head off every time he came into the lane. And so I've kind of digested the whole Caitlin Clark story and narrative as very impressed with her as a player and a person, but confused as to why there's just not what I perceive to be more broad acceptance about the impact that she has made from players that feel like they deserve more based off of their tenure. Does any of that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. And I do think, there might be, I wouldn't say jealousy, but I guess for a lack of a better term, maybe, or they're envious of some of the things that have, maybe been brought to her. But I think high tide rises all ships. So I truly believe that her impact on the game at the professional level is only going to bring more attention, which is probably going to bring, more revenue in, as well as with the new CBA, hopefully getting these players paid more. So, maybe initially that might have been the case, but at the end of the day, I truly believe, especially with the CBA negotiating and all that stuff going on right now, I think they're all kind of pulling in the same direction, and they want what's best for the league and all their players because, like I said, it is a very talented league. I'm watching more WNBA basketball over the last 3 years than I ever had. And it's really cool because it's a game. It's a beautiful game, especially when the ball is moving. There are a lot of skills where people are letting it fly from three. And like I said, the athleticism piece is getting better and better. And people are challenging and putting pressure on the rim and possibly dunking more and more in games. So it's pretty crazy to think about that. But I do think, high tide rises all ships. And I think you're going to see that when they hopefully sooner than later, they settle on the new collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah, and hopefully that's on the way, and hopefully the players, receive what they deserve based off the valuation. Some of these franchises, it's just nice that they're no longer flying coach at 2 a.m. to get to Sacramento or whatever. But you know what I mean? It's been ridiculous forever.
Yes.
Genuinely out of curiosity, when it comes to the players that your players look up to or refer to as like, I want to be, like, I want to be like Mike is what I grew up with, right? Who are the players that are most often referred to as, the players that your players want to emulate?
That's a great question. We have conversations, and I don't know, just because I'm old, I try to bring up players that I looked up to, and some of them scratch their head and look at me like, who? So we really talk about, I try to teach them or try to tell them to Google these certain players and like, man, this kid or this player, this guy was a beast. This female was a beast. Like, you got to do a little bit more research. Today's generation, I'm not so sure how much they watch, which sometimes can be a problem. I would love for them to live a little bit more when they're away from us, studying the game, especially at the highest level. But I think everybody, looks at like a Steph Curry, right? Because of how we play as well. They want to be able to shoot the basketball. So that's somebody that just, right off the tip of my tongue, everybody looks to emulate and want to be like, because he's literally transformed the game on the men's side. On the women's side, that's a great question. We might have to poll the team tomorrow at film session, and I have to poll and see who is their role model or somebody they look up to on the women's side.
Yeah, I'd be genuinely curious whether it is Caitlin just because of how popular she is. I mean, you referenced Diana Taurasi. I remember watching Diana play, and I don't know, part of me still, I feel like she might be the greatest women's player I've ever watched.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I got the privilege when I was at the University of Hawaii to coach against her. And it was the year fresh off their national championship, but they lost all their seniors. And she was, I think at the time, going to be a junior. And she literally carried that team to another national championship.
Yeah.
She was impressive. I mean, you know from being from back east, but like Brianna Stewart's another one. Like that's a really good basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a lot of who's who, and it would be interesting to see who our players. I'm gonna have to do that. I'm gonna have to pull that next time we get a chance.
All right, last thing before I say you lose. I'm reading your bio, and your wife is also a coach. My question is, how do coaches stay married?
Yeah. Well, I guess the easy answer is she got out of coaching. So.
Okay.
No, but we actually did. We met as opposing coaches, started dating, did the long distance thing. Then we actually coached together for 3 years at the University of Idaho. Then when I went back to the University of Hawaii, she stepped away from the game so we could start our family. And that's kind of where things have been since then. So she is very knowledgeable. We do talk a little bit of basketball at home, and it's all good. It's a healthy relationship in that regard, and she keeps me grounded because she'll disagree with me and she'll point out where I'm wrong. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're right. So it's fun. I feel bad sometimes for our daughters. She's very critical of them and their basketball skill set and how hard they play. And I'm fortunate I get to be daddy at that point and love them up where she can be the critiquer of their basketball.
Well, look, Coach, I appreciate the time. We're pulling for you. Drive safe down south and go get the win, will you?
Awesome. Thanks so much, Spence, and go Utes.
All right. Coach Gavin Peterson at Coach GP7 on social media. The Utah women will take on BYU coming up Saturday at 2 o'clock. That game can be seen on ESPN Plus, and, of course, it can be heard right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. All right, Pitbull is taking over the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater on June 3rd. Tune in weekdays at 1:30 this week for your chance to score a pair of tickets to the show. More details can be found on ESPN700sports.com. We'll catch a break. A little sports court coming up on the other side. We're back to college and pro football. Some storylines during the 5 o'clock hour of the show on a Thursday, so keep it here on ESPN 700. It is Sports Court time. We do it every Thursday, right about now, with our good friends Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy. Gentlemen, happy Thursday. How are we doing?
Hey, Spence, doing well. How you doing?
Hi, Spence.
All good here. All good here. A massive story. A lot of people talking about this week. Bill Belichick and his 8 Super Bowl rings. Not enough to be voted into the Hall of Fame on his first try. He'll get in eventually as well. But apparently this has a legal angle to it, which I was unaware of. So go ahead and inform us.
Well, Spence, really there is no legal issue involving Bill Belichick. We knew it had to be brought up this week, and as a loyal Patriot fan, Garrett and I are trying to look and see if we can represent a bunch of Patriot fans and go after those voters in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, I see. Okay.
We can't come up with a legal issue there. So moving on to the story, there is a legal story, a legitimate one, involving the NFL Hall of Fame, and this involves trademark infringement. What this grows out of is the estate of Victor Maitland is suing the NFL and the Hall of Fame, claiming that trademark infringement and unfair practices. And this grows out of a claim that Victor Maitland, who has passed away, he designed or sketched the original shield and patch that goes on the famous yellow Hall of Fame gold jacket. They claim that the NFL for years and years has enjoyed substantial profits for the use of this gold jacket and the shield and the patch. Well, the judge looked at this and he recognized that Victor Maitland had made significant contributions to the NFL. He's an alumni. I don't know if he played, but an alumni of the NFL, and that the NFL actually had enjoyed some profits. But from a legal standpoint, the judge said that Maitland did not assign, sell, or otherwise transfer ownership of various marks at issue in this case. So essentially, he didn't do some good estate planning, and he didn't pass on this trademark enjoyment didn't pass on to his estate. The judge also they ended up dismissing the case. He pointed to the fact that this lawsuit did a shotgun approach. It named a bunch of entities, and that's kind of a no-no because you don't really let the real party in interest know about this to defend. And the big one was the statute of limitations, right? That all this time had gone by and they hadn't done anything about it, and it's kind of pretty much barred by the statute of limitations. So the case has been kicked out. And one final note, I thought it was strange that Victor Maitland is the antagonist villain in Beverly Hills Cop, if anyone recognized that.
Oh, for sure. All right, Garrett, before I throw it over to you, I knew Preston was a Patriots fan, which breaks my heart, but you are also a Patriots fan, Garrett?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
Preston's trying to,
just
recruit me on that.
All right, because that would have hurt my feelings. But anyway, you're up.
Yeah, well, The Athletic actually has a pretty long story on this if anybody's interested in the history of the gold jacket for the Hall of Fame. But and I'm reading between the lines a little bit here, but it looks like this Victor Maitland, his kids are upset that the NFL have not given their dad, his due for coming up with the idea to have a gold jacket. And so there's been a dispute there, and so they filed this lawsuit that Preston described. And I think it was pretty flimsy, but the judge found some ways to have the case dismissed. But I think this really is about just some kids who want their dad's memory enshrined somewhere by the NFL.
Deion Sanders made some news not too long ago. He's going to start fining players for failing to attend practice, missing film sessions, etc. So the legal side of this story out of the world of college football sounds like what?
Well, right. I mean, as we continue in this evolution of, college athletes, right? Student athletes, we used to call them, to now NIL deals and revenue sharing and, contractual arrangements to play and be paid. Well, now Deion's going, hey, well, you guys, this feels like my days back in the pros when we got paid and there was a corresponding obligation to be on time to practice, not miss, right? Show up for a film study, that kind of thing. And so he's, established basically a fine schedule. Well, one of the differences between college sports and, of course, pro sports is this designation of being an employee, right? So in the NFL, the NFL Players Association, the NFL, there's collective bargaining over for example, the fine schedule that they have in the NFL. There's nothing like that in college, and obviously this is sort of a, we know about it from Colorado, but kind of a shotgun approach. And so it just brings up the question of the evolution of college athletes and their status, right? I mean, for right now, they have been deemed not to be employees, but it does seem like we're heading in that direction. And as we sort of formalize this kind of financial relationship between schools, even conferences and players, that line's getting blurred, and that might be where we're heading. And so there's some legal implications when a school imposes this sort of, financial penalties.
Over to you, Preston. What do you got, buddy?
Yeah, I think Garrett nailed it pretty good. But it's really surprising that Primetime didn't think ahead before he jumped on this, and this got out public, that he didn't go to the athletic department and probably get a legal opinion on this. I mean, it draws all kinds of questions, right? Okay, you're fined $400 for this. Where does the money go? Are these kids Venmoing the athletic department? Who gets the benefit of that? Very different than pro sports. One legal expert looked at this and said one of the fines that he said is for players posting, I guess, social media. They call it social media misconduct. And the legal expert said, well, that goes into areas of free speech, and kids their social media is part of their NIL, and I guess there's certain things that certainly could be termed as misconduct. But I think we'll see Deion come out with a pretty quick retraction of this, or he might be having losing a lot of other players.
A surprising ending, at least in my opinion, to a story that we discussed when it first broke. So Darian Mensah, who's the quarterback that was at Duke, and he's a very good player, as we outlined, I believe last week, signed a deal to come back to Duke, and then Miami, through back channels, indicated they would be interested to have him play. I thought this was going to end with Mensah back at Duke. The timing of it makes it really hard for Duke to go get a new quarterback. But what has transpired is a settlement that looks like it's going to pave the way for Mensah to go to Miami, which is surprising to me. What do you guys have here?
Well, I totally agree with your assessment there, Spence. And I think we said last week, this might have been a negotiation ploy by Mensah. But the background is that he entered the portal on like the last day or two. Duke catches wind of this, and what does Duke do? This is a kind of a first. We've talked about University of Georgia suing the kid who transferred to Missouri, but they sued him. They said, no, you got an NIL contract with us, and we're going to try and enforce the NIL contract and the terms of it. And so they ran to the judge, and they wanted a preliminary injunction preventing him from entering the portal. So that brought up all kinds of issues, and the judge looked at it and said, hold the phone. Let's kind of just put this on pause and see if we can figure this out. So that was short-lived, and here we get a report this week that the parties have settled it, which I think is really interesting because settlement indicates that there's been some agreements and potentially compensation one way or the other. But and it's really surprising to me that we just didn't hear that Duke dismissed the lawsuit. But I think Duke's trying to save some face, and both of them looking like they kind of came out okay. Duke came out with their statement was they reached a settlement agreement with Duke, calling it fair and mutually agreeable resolution. Duke says this enables both parties to move forward without a quarterback, of course. And it says, Duke came out with this as enforcing those agreements. He said it makes it really difficult to, take legal action against student athletes, which I think they saw this and thought this is not going to go our way. But I agree with you, Spence. I thought, we're going to hear he stays, and they've got another NIL deal. But Mensah is the ultimate winner on this. He's on his way to Miami, and Duke is scrambling looking for a quarterback.
All right, Garrett, over to you, buddy.
Well, in some ways, it's too bad that the case settled because we're still left this is not a settled area of the law at all, right? This question about players and contracts and needing to stay at a school or can they leave. And so it remains unresolved. We don't know the terms of the settlement between, two private universities and the player. So I think it's still going to be another fight to be litigated down the road. Well, I'm sure we'll see it again.
All right, moving over to another situation we've discussed, and it also is about eligibility. This one is the latest with Ole Miss quarterback Trinidad Chambliss and his battle against the NCAA to come back and play more football. What do we have here?
Yeah, he wants another year. It looks like, the rumor is his NIL deal would be more than $5 million, if he could get another year at Ole Miss. And as maybe a middle round, second round draft pick, he's probably not going to make that much as a rookie in the NFL. So he'd like another year. And of course, we've talked about this a lot on Sports Court, about having, 5 years to play for, and then what the issues are where you're coming from, like a junior college or D3 school or something like that. And one of his issues is that he applied for a waiver from the NCAA to get another year, essentially claiming that he had an incapacitating injury or illness back in 2022 that prevented him from missing a season. He was at Ferris State. And the NCAA denied the waiver. But what's coming out now, why we're talking about the story again, is there was a recent filing by his legal counsel, and the comment was basically they've got some evidence that the NCAA, their policy is to lean towards just denying every single waiver that comes through. That's how the stance they look at waivers is, well, we're going to probably deny it. And so he's saying, hey, you're just not giving kids a fair shake. You're not being objective about these waiver applications, and you're not looking at all the evidence. And in fact, he likened them to an insurance company. That's something Preston and I deal with a lot, which, and saying, hey, you've got a pattern and a practice of just denying requests and denying people's waivers, regardless of what's in it. So I think that's what they're looking for as a way to now push this, because now they've got a lawsuit going, right, and they're looking for a permanent injunction so that he can get another year.
All right, Preston, over to you, buddy.
Yeah, a couple of interesting facts. They filed this in the Chancery Court of Lafayette in Mississippi, that is very close to the campus of Ole Miss. The judge assigned to this is an Ole Miss law grad. We always want to say judges are above any bias, but as Garrett mentioned, he's filed for a temporary restraining order, and hopefully he's looking to get a permanent restraining order. But the other way is to follow the Diego Pavia path and just drag it out, and just let that temporary in place, and he goes and plays another season, and then the legal issue's done. It's moot at that point.
All right, final one for today. I'm glad we're going to dig into this because it is just bizarre. There's a little bit of a local tie because Ryan Wedding was a Canadian snowboarder who performed here in the 2002 Winter Olympic Games. Well, he's no longer a snowboarder. He has moved into the next phase of his career. He's accused of moving 60 tons of cocaine from Latin America into the United States. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's too much cocaine. Feels like an aggressive amount of cocaine. But he's been arrested, and that's kind of the tip of the iceberg. This appears to be, I'll just say, a bad guy. What's going on? Bad
dude, and you kind of stole my thunder there, Spence, but he did compete in 2002 Salt Lake Olympics as a snowboarder, and I guess he saw that snowboarding wasn't going to be a real good career, so he turned to a life of crime and drugs, and he has been a top 10 fugitive on the FBI's list, and they were closing in on him, and he turned himself in to the embassy, U.S. Embassy in Mexico. The charges here grow out of claims that he was moving lots of cocaine between Colombia, Mexico, Canada, Southern California. He was under the protection. Yeah, this isn't just a guy selling a few drugs. He was under the protection of the Sinaloa cartel. In addition to charges of moving drugs around, there's claims that he's involved in, involved in murder of a federal witness and 3 other people. So he's scheduled to appear in federal court in Los Angeles. This might have the makings of a Netflix series. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Garrett, final word is yours, bud.
The picture of his collection of Ducati motorcycles is unreal. Apparently valued at like $40 million. I mean, there's hundreds of them. So anyway, apparently he did plead not guilty this morning. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned is right. All right, gentlemen, before I set you loose for this Thursday, for any of our listeners who have legal questions, how can they get a hold of you over at Handy and Handy?
Yeah, Spence, we love coming on here and talking about these legal issues in the world of sports. We want to hear from many of the listeners out there. If we can help you, especially if you've got a personal injury case where you've been injured in an accident, give us a call, 801-264-6677, or visit our website at handylawyutah.com. We'd love to hear from you.
All right, guys, good stuff today. Have a great weekend. And, of course, as always, go Seahawks.
Go Pat. Seahawks. Go Pat. Go Utes. Go Pat.
There you go.
Go Utes.
All right, guys, thanks for the time. Garrett and Preston Handy
Thanks, Spence.
from the law firm of Handy and Handy. I always appreciate their time every Thursday. All right, good news. We have a new client, and ironically enough, I was there like 2 weeks ago. Okay, so it's a new burger spot. It's called Burger Fusion, and it is it's in Trolley Square. It's like right around the corner from Whole Foods and right where the old Trolley Wing Company used to be, and it is awesome. Okay, so if you love bold and flavorful gourmet burgers, you will love Burger Fusion. I'm telling you, if you have not tried it, you should go there tonight. I do think they have some delivery options as well, but when you order a burger and it's delivered, it usually doesn't end up warm. So go down to the spot just west of Whole Foods. Very unique, okay? So let's get into a couple of these. The one I have their menu in front of me. I tried their Velvet Smoke Show, okay, which is creamy peanut butter, berry jam, bacon, caramelized onions, hot honey pickles, and cold slaw. It sounds like a little bit of a risk, but it was actually awesome. I've also had their cheese royale, which is cheddar cheese, caramelized onions, tomato, and coleslaw. They've got great onion rings. They have awesome fries. I am thrilled that they opened this up because it's brand new and it's right by my house. So I've been there a couple of different times, and I would definitely try it. They've got great appetizers like mozzarella squares. They call it Cuban cigars, which is a craveable spin on a classic sandwich in a crispy egg roll, slow roasted pork, savory ham, melted cheese, dill pickle, mustard, as well as tangy Utah barbecue sauce. They've got great Havarti pickle squares, fried pickles, essentially. Their fries are awesome. Onion rings are awesome, but really known for their gourmet burgers. They have a Merlot Reserve, which is Merlot, I think it's Bellavitino cheese, bacon. My mouth is watering. These look awesome. Apple slice, caramelized onions, apple basil slaw, and apple aioli. So stop by Burger Fusion. Go there tonight for dinner here in Salt Lake. It's 490 and 700 East. It is at Trolley Square. You can check them online at burgerfusion.com. Thrilled to have them on board, and it's fun that I've actually been able to go there to try it, to tell you about it, our good friends at Burger Fusion. All right, we got 3 hours down. We have 1 hour to go. We'll get to the final hour of the program coming up next. Our buddy Max Brown stops by, and then we'll say goodnight at 6 o'clock right here on ESPN 700. All right, let's get it. Drive at 5 time, Thursday afternoon style. About 45 degrees and sunny today. It's been a beautiful day. We had a little bit of a snowstorm last night, which wiped out the inversion, which is always a good thing. Want to let you know that the Farmers Insurance Open is going on right now. PGA Tour is in San Diego, lovely San Diego, Torrey Pines. Brooks Koepka in the field. It's time now for your PGA update. You can get custom fitting at You Into Golf by Worldwide Golf for the new Cobra Optim drivers. The new Cobra Optim is the first driver to optimize POI and MOI. Experience straighter drives and more robust distance. You Into Golf by Worldwide Golf. Get there. Justin Rose carded a 62 today. That dude does not age. He is at 10 under par. He is your leader in the clubhouse, followed by Justin Lower, carding a 63 for 9 under par. Max Griesman and Hideki Matsuyama finished on fire for a 64. They're at 8 under. Then it's Maverick McNeely, Steven Yeager. Seamus Power at 7 under par. Mark Hubbard, Sahith Theegala, Max McGreevy, Jake Knapp, and let's see, Marco Rosso, at 6 under par. Brooks Koepka in his return to the PGA Tour struggled, at least for the first round, 2 over par. But a lot of really good golfers not having great days, so we'll see if Brooks can get it going to play over the weekend. Tony Finau, our local boy, even par, even 72, along with Patrick Cantlay and Gary Woodland. Some good golfers struggling today. Oh, Brooks birdied 18, 1 over par for a 73. So there you go. All right, Jazz are off tonight. Lost to the Warriors last night. After a pretty decent start, Golden State just ran away from him. Will Hardy not happy with his team's defensive effort because his team's defensive effort is non-existent. The Jazz have lost 4 straight games now. They've lost 9 of their last 10 and look to be in the neighborhood of being able to retain their draft asset, which is a first-round pick, top 8 protected that goes to OKC if it's not in the right spot. So 1 week away from the NBA trade deadline, the conversation surrounds Giannis Antetokounmpo. According to Shams Charania from ESPN, it's either going to be the New York Knicks, the Miami Heat, the Golden State Warriors, or the Minnesota Timberwolves are the main players. We talked about the potential of the Jazz getting involved in something like this, and it's really a waste of air because they're not going to. But ultimately, we are in the final, 35 games or so of what is year 4 of a quote-unquote rebuild that hasn't gained a ton of traction just yet. Now, are there some things to look at and be hopeful for? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were able to get Market in the Mitchell deal, which is not nothing. Now, that deal hasn't aged as well as a lot of people thought that it would. Still need to see what the draft capital turns into. And the growth of Keontae George is not nothing. He's been able to evolve into a legitimate bucket getter in pro basketball, which, of course, you need. A lot of question marks surrounding most of the other pieces. I'm putting Walker Kessler aside because, of course, he's hurt, and I think he's good. I don't think there's anything else we need to learn about him. I think it's pretty safe to say that whether it's here or somewhere else, Walker Kessler, as long as he can stay healthy, will be a 10, 12-year pro, if not longer than that. But when you look at some of the other pieces and some of the other players, I just think it's safe to say that there still are a ton of questions about who this team could eventually be if certain things fall into place. Now, the reality is without the same type of luck that teams like Cleveland received to draft LeBron and Kyrie, or teams like San Antonio received to draft Duncan and Victor Wembanyama, who every time I watch him, I'm like, I'm glad the Jazz won like 35 games that year because what a waste. That dude is the future of the league. At some point, I think it's a fan base that deserves this front office and ownership group to finally do something bold. And is something bold like trading for Giannis intelligent as it pertains to what the long-term goals are? Probably not, and that's why it's not going to happen. The Jazz could, along with teams like Oklahoma City and San Antonio, who have good young players, and if we're honest, San Antonio and Oklahoma City have young players that are much better than any of the Jazz young players. Side note, I really have loved what I've seen from Ace lately. He's at about 19 points per game over the past 5 after Will decided to start him. He got healthy. He's playing bigger minutes. So there's a real promising young player on this roster. I am not as high on, like, Keontae George is not an all-star. If we could stop saying that, that would be great. But he has grown into a legitimate individual scorer, bucket getter. Decision-making has been better. The efficiency is a little bit better. I mean, it had to be better, or else he'd probably be in Europe already. The defensive stuff, that's where this team night in and night out is as bad as any team I've ever seen at even trying to play defense. I lost track of how many backdoor cuts Golden State was able to execute for easy layups last night. Defense collapses. It opens up for the three-point line, and Golden State obviously has a player named Steph Curry who's pretty good at that. And a bunch of other players who, if left wide open to take practice three-point shots, are capable of doing that because they're professional basketball players. Lazy closeouts, no physicality on defense. Don't take away the airspace, stay connected to the body. Basic defensive principles the Jazz are horrific at. Golden State 23 of 54 last night from three. It seemed like anybody who got minutes was able to get wide open looks. Steph knocks down 4. Moses Moody knocks down 5. But ultimately, the bigger takeaway is at what point does this front office or this ownership group look to do something that moves the needle and expedites the growth a little bit? Giannis is 31 years old. But, Porter, I did it. I pulled up the NBA trade machine, and I found a deal that works for the Jazz to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Are you ready to hear my hypothetical Jazz trade that lands Giannis in Salt Lake?
I'm ready for it.
Okay, here we go. This works according to the numbers, all right? The Jazz receive Giannis. Now, Giannis has a player option next year, so you would need assurance that Giannis suddenly loves snowboarding or something, that he wants to sign a long-term contract here. But the Jazz get Giannis in exchange for Svi Mikhailuk, Kevin Love, George Niang, Kyle Anderson, and Yusuf Nurkic. The numbers line up. The Jazz get Giannis. Milwaukee gets Nurkic, Anderson, Niang, Kevin Love, and Svi Mikhailuk. My guess is the Jazz are going to have to put in, I don't know, 70 million draft picks to make it work. The numbers line up. So this is, I mean, obviously we're having fun with it. That's a deal that would work as long as the Jazz would have to include all the draft picks. So there's your hypothetical Giannis deal that lands Giannis in Salt Lake.
They would have to include all the draft picks. And for me, I would need, and listen, I know Giannis is still really good, but I would need like a deal for him. If you're a team asking, I'm going to be giving a little leverage based on the fact that he's 31 and not necessarily the type of basketball player / athlete that ages super well. He relies completely on his physicality, his explosiveness, his ability to get down the floor faster than everybody. Now he's 7 feet tall and athletic, so he's going to have a whole nother contract of really good basketball. But it's not like even a LeBron or trying to think of like a Kobe who was so skilled that his game aged okay, right? Once Giannis's legs go, he's gone. Like his now, maybe he proves me wrong. Maybe he develops a Brook Lopez 3-point shot. Maybe he extends his career in that way. But that's one player that you kind of have to look at, particularly on what does that look like 33, 34, 35 years old. Not mortgaging my future on it, even though I very much like Giannis and have for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Jazz are not going to do this. We know the deal. They're going to long game this. They're going to continue to try to figure out if some of these draft picks will start to evolve in a way that we haven't seen so far. But they're going to need luck. That's what it comes down to. And if once again you're losing your way into the bottom four, and we're sitting here watching the draft lottery coming up in the spring, and you fall down to 7 or 8, like, I don't know. At some point, it's great to have clean books. It's great to have cap space. It's great to have draft picks. It's great to have draft capital. You got to use it at some point to bring in guys who can actually move the needle, not these, extremely average, benign wings that you've drafted, Cody and Taylor and Sensabaugh. Like, it's not working. It just isn't. And this is going to be the last year we'll have to deal with this. But in the meantime, every time one of these generational players becomes available, you just have to kick the tires on whether or not this fan base deserves that you as the ownership group or the front office, you do something bold to really make a difference. So, I don't know, man. Giannis is one of those guys. Luka Doncic was traded last year once upon a time. This felt like once in a generation, and maybe it's more common now than it ever has been. All right, we'll catch a break. Coming up on the other side, we'll get you ready. All right, final segment of the program, Thursday afternoon style. Almost to that weekend. Man, was it a nice day today in Salt Lake City after a little snowstorm last night. Here in Salt Lake, it was about 45 degrees and clear. We're expecting 50-degree weather Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. I made a tee time to play golf on Saturday afternoon in the month of January during the year of our Lord 2026. What is going on?
Congrats.
I guess. It's odd.
It's unfortunate. We did get some snow yesterday down here in the valley. It didn't stick, but we got a little moisture. So, not going to complain too much. Hopefully, we get some more, but maybe mix in a few really good days for your tee times.
Yeah, I mean, look, I like warm weather. I enjoy sun. I like being outside. Took Duke on a little walk today around the park, which was lovely. It's just kind of winter literally skipped us this year, which is wild. All right, Jazz off tonight. There's a bevy of NBA action this evening. The Utah Mammoth are in Carolina, where they trail 1-0 as of now. Utah men back at it on Saturday against Oklahoma State. The women take on BYU, as we discussed earlier with Gavin Peterson. Not a lot of local stuff going on tonight. Mostly NBA basketball. If you're looking to check out some hoop, the Farmers Insurance Open at Torrey Pines, round 1 in the books today. Justin Rose carded a 10 under par. Man, that guy just does not age. Little golf action as well. Not a lot of local stuff, quite frankly. The Eagles have a new quarterbacks coach, so that came down. There are 2 more vacancies in the world of pro football, with the Raiders and the Cardinals next in line. Sean Mannion, who played his college ball at Oregon State, is the new quarterbacks coach for the Eagles. He was with the Packers back in the day. So you got to lean on the Super Bowl. We were talking earlier. 4.5 points feels like a big spread. I don't know that I am confident in picking the Patriots to win the thing. I'm leaning Seattle, but I'm going to fade the points, I think. What do you think?
I think that's entirely fair. I do think the Seahawks win the football game, but I would not be surprised based on the matchup and just based on how football seems to, I'd call it the football gods if you want, seems to be working lately. I would not be surprised if it comes down to a field goal or at least a team having to get a stop there at the end. So 4.5. That's a tough one because they're pitting you right between a field goal and a touchdown win. I think it's going to be right there. I think it's going to be a 3 or a 6 point win, and I'm leaning Seattle. We'll see if there's any injury or roster updates in the meantime.
Amazon Prime has a good one tonight. They've got OKC in Minnesota, so Oklahoma City and the T-Wolves. So that's a solid little watching option if you're looking for something to do on a Thursday night. I will be on TV tonight with Dave Fox at 10:35 on KMYU. We call that 5 Questions with Spence. Do a little jazz. We'll do a little college football, a little Super Bowl. And I think we're going to talk some Olympics tonight. So I've got some work to do before I go do TV. All right, Porter, let's get out of here. What comes our way on a Friday edition of The Drive?
Friday edition of The Drive. Our good friend, Dave McMiniman, for the NBA Daily Assist. Noah Eagle stops by, play-by-play extraordinaire, who just keeps climbing in the industry. Paul Pugmire will give us the latest on the PGA Tour. And then Sean Mooney is going to grace our studio with his presence.
He's going to come in studio?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. That'll be fun to see Sean. All right. Join us for a Friday show. Get your weekend started out the right way. We will say goodnight. And a very special thank you to Sam Bruckhouse, Max Brown, Cade Madsen, and Gavin Peterson. For any of the sound you missed from the show, go to the website. It's ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app. Take us on the go. ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. Then finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, check out our podcast page. It is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. That's available wherever you get your shows these days. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, and give us all the stars. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Thursday evening. We'll talk to you on a Friday Drive. As always, you can catch it right here on ESPN 700.